Welcome to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Welcome, IB Nation. Of course, it is a Monday, which means we have the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour that we're going to get into here today. I am Ryan Robertson, Director of Recruiting at irishbreakdown.com, joined, of course, by my main man, Shaun Davis, recruiting analyst for the site as well. 3 segments for you all today, right? So, number one, we're going to be hitting on a lot of the recruits that were in action this past weekend, or past week, I should say. Some played on Thursday, some played on Friday this past week. We're going to be talking a little bit about some of the key performances, some of the best performances, and just work through a little bit of, the 2023 and 2024 class as far as what Notre Dame should be excited about. Second, we're going to be going around the horn for a little bit of college football talk. We talked about some of the, with it being the first full week number 1 this past week of college football, we have some instant reactions. There were a lot of games other than the Notre Dame game against Ohio State. So I'm going to be working through a little bit of that. We're not going to rehash Notre Dame, Ohio State too much during the show unless you all have questions about it that we're going to hit on the mailbag, which will be our third section of the day. So before we start into the recruiting talk, if you could please like, share, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're listening on a podcast platform, if you can give us a 5-star rating, nice little review in there too would be awesome. Fantastic. Not signing for the message board. We have content and intel coming out. It seems like every single day. If you go to board.irishbreakdown.com, which is streaming at the bottom if you're watching on YouTube, you should definitely do that. And appreciate everyone as always for joining with us today. Of course, Coach Freeman just had his press conference, so I know there's going to be probably some questions about that as well here today. And if anybody wants to put questions in for the mailbag later in the show, you can feel free to put those in now, and I will start starring them, and we'll get to those later today. But we want to start about Recruiting Hour, which is why me and Shaun are on this show every Monday. Shaun, I guess I should just start us out, man. How's everything going? I know we're if anybody didn't hear our nice 2:30 podcast discussing the Saturday game with Notre Dame, we were down, if we're being completely honest. I feel like we have been talked off the ledge slightly, but still obviously a very disappointing loss for Notre Dame. But let's put that behind us. Shaun, how's everything going on this fine Monday, my friends?
Wonderful. If you have bad feelings about Saturday night, we get to talk about the future to fill those voids. So it's going to be a really good hour.
Yeah, no, yeah. It is, man. There's the positivity that we're going to start the show on is that there were a lot of great football players who just had some big victories, big performances, and it's the future of Notre Dame football that we're going to kind of be rehashing. So, Shaun, I know where everyone wants to start. So what they want to start every single week. What's the most important position in sports? Easy answer is quarterback, of course. CJ Carr played last Thursday. I think we may have talked about this a little bit on Friday, but he and his, I was told it was Saline is how you pronounce it. So I apologize for saying Saline in the past. But the Saline Hornets took on Ann Arbor Huron, and they won 35-24. So, Shaun, some highlights of this game. We talked a little bit about it from the Recruiting Hour last week. CJ had a very up-and-down performance in the first week, 350 yards, a couple touchdown passes, a touchdown run, but he did have 4 turnovers in that game, 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles. He was cleaner in this game. Now, Saline got off to a really good start. They got off to a 28-10 lead in this game. They eventually won 28-24, so there was a little bit of a comeback in this game where they kind of had to hold him off, but it was a much cleaner football game. I know he had a fumble during the game, but otherwise was clean from a turnover perspective in this game. 2 touchdown passes, 2 touchdown runs on the ground. So a pretty nice game for CJ Carr as he continues for his team, an undefeated stretch to start this season.
And as we said, we knew that it looked like he tried to really do a lot, maybe a little bit too much in his first matchup. And he came out more comfortable just playing his game. He's a really, really good distributor of the football. And you like to see that as a quarterback, and it makes you feel good about his decisions, how quickly he makes decisions, his accuracy. He throws a beautiful deep ball. He just throws a really beautiful deep ball. And you have to be happy with what you're seeing from this young man each and every week. And, we'll wait to see if he will be added to the 23 class down the line or whether or not he stays in the 24 class. Yep. I'm sure Irish fans will have their antennas up on that one. But what else can you say? I mean, we're going to come back here each and every week, Ryan, and say pretty much the same thing. Like, this kid is pretty good.
Yes.
Pretty good quarterback, and you should feel really good about, him coming to Notre Dame.
Well, and I love the fact, Shaun, that he had a much cleaner performance from week one, right? We talked a little bit about it. Sometimes that stuff happens in game one, man. And I know Boss Domer just said, Base and Domer said Ben M played great. Of course, talking about Ben Minich. We'll get to him because you are correct. I mean, kid continues to have a really nice start to the season. But CJ Carr has me feeling pretty good about the future, obviously, of the quarterback position, Shaun. And I think if anything that we get to have a takeaway from this past game, it's the fact that I think you need to give quarterbacks a little bit of time, right? I mean, one football game does not define a football player in general, especially a quarterback. So I think this could be said for Tyler Buckner. I think it could also be said for CJ Carr. Give him a little bit of time, man. It's the first game of the season. So, yes, very excited to see what CJ did.
That's one of the things that shocked me so much is that I think fans are so uneven when it comes to development at the quarterback position. Either they don't understand the difficulty of the position, number one. I mean, watching it on TV is one thing. It seems like, throw the ball to the receiver, avoid the rush. Oh, it's simple. And there's so many facets to it because most guys that come in out of high school to college football were really good high school quarterbacks. And then in order to become a really good college quarterback is another level. And of course, the NFL is a whole nother conversation. You watch film all the time and you talk about guys going from college to the pros. Is there anyone, and I might be putting you on the spot here, but is there anyone in particular on the college level that you can say that CJ reminds you of as far as demeanor and the way he throws the ball and the way he moves?
Yeah. There's one guy that's an easy one for me, Shaun. Like we talked about this one, actually, me and Brian a couple months ago, I guess. I think it was right when CJ committed to Notre Dame. I know some people aren't going to love this comp, but he reminds me a lot of Davis Mills when he was at Stanford. Like I think there was a really clean pro style approach, but a better athlete than you consider, and not like the biggest arm in the world, but like just really accurate. Like that's a guy for me that I see. I've also heard someone, I forget who it was, made this comp that said Matt Ryan, like a younger Matt Ryan, like coming out of Boston College. That one makes a lot of sense too. I like that one because Matt, again, he wasn't the flamethrower of a quarterback, right? But he had a good arm, good plus arm, incredibly accurate though. That was like the best thing about Matt Ryan is he was a really accurate quarterback. That's the best thing about CJ right now is I think CJ has a good frame. He's right around 6'2.5", 6'3" 180, 190 pounds, somewhere in that ballpark. Like he's going to be 210, 215 before too long in his college career. But I mean, for me, it's the accuracy that he plays with, like decision-making can always be something that can be improved on at the quarterback position. There's no perfect processor, but I think the main thing that jumps out about me is he's got good arm talent and he's a really accurate quarterback, like those things. And he's maybe a better athlete than I thought originally, if I'm being honest. Because I mean, we've seen him first couple weeks, a couple scrambles, a couple touchdowns. I'm like, okay, man, he could do a little more outside of structure than maybe I thought as well. So those are a couple guys though. Davis Mills is the one that I like, and then Matt Ryan I've heard also. I don't know if either one of those are good ones or if you like either one of those ones, but that's kind of for a couple names.
Let's be real. Davis Mills comes through Stanford. He gets injured, but he's still looked upon from NFL guys as a really good pick.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we might get a steal here. And then he surprises a lot of people on a bad Texans team with the way he was able to play and lead that team. So Davis Mills, in my opinion, is a really good comp. Some people might look at that and say, oh, no. Like, no, Davis Mills is a good quarterback. And I like the comp. They might not like the ceiling.
Yeah.
But he came through. He didn't come through Stanford when Stanford was at the same level when Andrew Luck did.
No, they're bad, man.
You put Davis Mills on that Stanford team that Andrew Luck played with, I think Davis Mills looks a whole lot better in college than he did when he came through Stanford, and the program was pretty much on a decline. So I love the comp. I don't look at Davis Mills as a bad comp to whereas, Irish fans would be like, oh, man, like, no, watch this kid play in the NFL. And you can see like, oh, man, you see why he was ranked so high coming out of high school. Like, I get it.
I was going to say that too, Shaun. I mean, the kid was a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school. Like, people forget, man, and he was good when he played for Stanford. It's just injuries early on, and then they hit the COVID season in 2020, so he only played in a handful of football games. Like, he didn't play. I think he only started like 9 football games in his career, and he could have went back for 2021, but he decided to obviously enter the draft and gets drafted in the 3rd round still. And I mean, I would argue he was the 2nd most efficient rookie quarterback last year. Like, he did a really good job considering it's not a great situation around him, if we're being completely honest. Like, Texas are not a good football team right now. They're not. I mean, all due respect to Lovie Smith, I will always have a place in my heart for Lovie Smith, because he's the coach for the Texans now moving forward. Because I'm a Rams fan, and he was the defensive coordinator for the Rams when they won the Super Bowl under Dick Vermeil. But I mean, my guy just had a losing record at University of Illinois, and now he's the head coach of a football team, you know what I mean, at the NFL level. So that's, I saw someone just put, I think John Mayo just put into the chat, Carr reminds me of Joe Burrow, poised, above average arm, super accurate, can run if need be. Hey, man, if he's anywhere near Joe Burrow, I'm good. We're good there. We'll be all right.
I'll take that.
Notre Dame will win a national championship in the next couple of years if he's anything near a Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is a fantastic player. We just got a super sticker, I believe is what we call these, from Stephen F. Stephen, thank you so much. Really appreciate the love here, my friends, and I hope you're enjoying the show. So we are now, Shaun, we want to move on. CJ Carr, better performance week 2 versus week 1. Let's move on to a bit of unfortunate news that I came across this week. And then we'll move on to the really fortunate news that Notre Dame has a lot of really nice pass catchers coming to campus here pretty soon. So Jaden Lamar, Lake Stevens, got off to a 26-16 loss. Was not aware of this before this game, but apparently Jaden has been dealing with an off-season shoulder injury that crept up during camp. So he was forced to miss this football game. Don't know if not sure if there's a timetable on when Jaden Lamar will be able to return to Lake Stevens, but unfortunately, he was not available in this first game. So we will keep everyone updated as far as, Jaden's health and when he's going to be able to get back on the field, but he was not available during Lake Stevens' unfortunate loss to Garfield 26-16. But Shaun, wide receivers, man, where do we start here? I mean, where do we start? Do we want to start with Jaden Greathouse, who was he put on a show, man. Put an absolute show. Everyone here knows.
We told you, Irish fans, don't get caught up on the 2 receptions in game 1. We told you what was coming.
Yes. Now hey, man, nobody on this chat except for maybe Salty Virginia Peanuts, if he is in here. Salty, what's up? If you are, no bigger fan of Jaden Greathouse than myself, man. I am, I just think he's going to be a fantastic player. I was talking to Brian the other day, man, and we're just like, is this kid going to catch 50 passes as a freshman? Like, he just seems like that type of kid, Yeah. But he had a quiet first game, 2 catches, 41 yards in the opener, because he was obviously Cade Klubnik is now part of the Clemson program. They were breaking in a new quarterback. I think his last name was Land. And fortunately, they opened things up a little bit in this game, Shaun. So he had, by my counts, this is in the first half.
Yeah.
He had 118 yards on 3 catches in the first half, including 2 touchdowns. So he had a 50-yard catch. He had a 52-yard touchdown reception. And also, if you guys haven't seen this one, it's going to be in an article, a recap that I'm dropping later today on irishbreakdown.com. Jaden Greathouse is also the punt returner for his team, and he took one back 60, where I am not exaggerating when I say he broke about 8 tackles on this 60-yard punt return for a touchdown. So my guy, in one half of football, in a blowout victory, 178 total yards and 3 touchdowns on 4 touches. That's all he got in the first half. I don't even know, to be honest with you, if he played in the second half. I don't know. All I know is that first half, 178 total yards and 3 touchdowns on 4 touches, man. Insane, Shaun. I think we all need to really start to understand this, right? Because Jaden is not the fastest receiver of all time. He's not. We'll never lie and say that he is. But he has just something about him that is different, man. He is an alpha to the highest degree. Physical, just understands how to play the game, great route runner. This kid's going to be a great player at Notre Dame, in my opinion. Absolute great player.
He is very reminiscent from the way he plays the game. And Irish fans, when you hear this name, you're probably going to perk up. Just the mentality, the toughness, I don't give a darn, give me the rock. He is very Golden Tate-ish. He's just like, he's much bigger than Golden Tate, but just the way he plays the game, he'll beat you inside. If you disrespect him, he'll get behind you in the defense and catch the ball deep. He just wants the ball. Slot, X, Y, it doesn't matter. Wherever you line me up, just give me the ball, I'll make a play. And you know what? I can actually, you know what? Let me move off that comp a little bit. Because I think he might be a mixture, Brian, of Golden Tate and Michael Floyd. He's Michael Floyd's size, with the same mentality, but just the toughness and being able to play on the inside like Golden Tate did. I think he's a perfect mixture of the two.
You know who reminds me of, Shaun? A non-Notre Dame comp for a second. But I get Cooper Kupp vibes, man. Like, I don't know why. It's just something about Cooper, man, because Cooper gets no credit for being the yak receiver he is, man, but he breaks so many tackles. He's such a good route runner, and he's physical. Like, those things are what Cooper Kupp does, and he makes his living in the slot, and I think that could also be Jaden Greathouse. Like, he could be a big slot type of receiver, but, I mean, I like your comp, though, because I think that Michael Floyd was just such a physically imposing dude, man, and Michael was faster than Jaden Greathouse is, but like he played physically at the catch point the same. And some of the yak stuff that Golden was able to do, I do see there. So we're going to call him Michael Tate, or we're going to call him Golden Floyd. Which one do you like better? Golden Floyd sounds pretty nice.
I like
that too.
I like Golden Floyd. That's hot. That's hot. I like that.
I like that.
The way the game is played now, which is not so much vertical, but taking advantage of the horizontal part of the field as well. This is where a guy like him can really come in and dominate without being that over-the-top fast guy. Like, he's really quick in short spaces. Breaks tackles. He's just a hell of a player, man. I don't know how they still have him as a 4-star. I don't.
It's because he probably only runs. It's because he probably only runs in the 4.6s, man. That's why. Like, they're just like, he's not that fast, and I get it. But like, some guys are just different, man. They're just different. Like, that's just point blank to it.
That 4.6 is without the ball.
Right, exactly.
Like, you give him the ball, I guarantee you he's not running that 4.6.
No, and if he is, man, he's still running through people. So who cares? I mean, that punt return, man, was just nutty because he's
crazy.
And Shaun, the best thing about it is like, how does it translate? He plays at the best competition in the country. Like, he plays in 6A ball in Texas. Like, he's balling, man. Look, man, I can talk every single day about Jaden Greathouse. I really can, because one, he's a great football player, has that alpha. He's that subtle confidence to him. He's also a great kid. Like, he really is, man. Like, he is going to be a great fit into the offense, which is exciting. But he wasn't the only wide receiver, I should say, pass catcher that had a big week, Shaun. I want to go to Dylan Edwards, who technically is a running back from Derby High School in Kansas, okay? So they played Manhattan, who's another good program out there. They lost 26-23 to Manhattan. But, Shaun, my guy is going to play slot receiver, kind of a gadget role at Notre Dame. That's kind of what they project him to. 4.3 athlete. He plays running back for this team. He ended the day with 191 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns, only 19 carries. Also had a long catch in this game as well. But they negated an 80-yard touchdown due to a holding penalty. My guy had right around 300 yards of total offense in this game. And if you watch some of the highlights that are going to be on my piece coming out, I mean, he's breaking 80-yarder, 68-yarder, 44-yarder. And you could just see that speed, that stop-start. The kid is going to be a just silly player in the slot, man. Like, not the same type. It's going to be like what people maybe thought CJ Sanders was. Like, he's that type of slot. He's not a Golden Tate type of slot. Like, he's more quick twitch, getting in and out of breaks. But the difference between those types of kids is usually, Shaun, like, those slot receivers are quick, not fast. This kid's fast. He's dynamic, man. And he's going to return punts. And again, another player that I just think you're going to be able to accentuate the strengths that he has, because he is just so explosive and so athletic, Dylan Edwards.
He reminds me of the type of athletes that were those same type of gadget slot running back type guys under Urban Meyer at Florida when there was a Percy Harvin or it was a Demps when he had those guys. And it's like they didn't have one position, but like they knew they wanted to get them the ball, and whatever they had to do to get them the ball, they moved them around and got them the ball. And he's going to be an explosive athlete like that. And that to have that type of scary individual on the field, that's the type of individual that the defense has to acknowledge. Like, where are they at? Where are they lining up at? Like, we got Braylon James over here. We got Great House right here. But, oh, he's on the field. Like, look out for the sweep. Look out for the reverse. Look out. Like, just look out for everything. Now the safeties are involved, and now your wide receivers can just go do what they want to do because everybody's paying attention to him, even if he comes in motion. Now the linebackers are worried about him. He's that type of individual you love to have, whether you're going to get him the ball or use him to take away from the primary objective on the offensive play. So, look, it's funny because it seems like every week you see a highlight and then another highlight pops up and you're wondering, wait a minute, is this the same play or did he just run?
Just did it again, man.
Again, right.
Over and over and over again. It's silly, man. It is. It's really, Shaun, I mean, my favorite thing about him too is that, again, he plays running back for his team, but then there's also some plays where he's playing wide receiver. I mean, if you hop on his huddle tape from 2021 season, the first catch is him running a post route and winning through contact. I'm like, oh, okay. Because I just saw someone put a comp in there to they put a comp to Tyler Lockett, which I kind of like that, man. Like, again, we have to see him play wide receiver full time, but the thing about Tyler Lockett is explosive, punt returner coming out of Kansas State, dynamic player. But the things about make Tyler Lockett special is that he has an unnatural ability to play bigger than he is at wide receiver, which you just can't quantify sometimes, man. So love it. Yep. And someone just said the Kansas State connection too, man. I dig it. Hey, let's hope that he's anything close to Tyler Lockett, because he's been one of the more underrated football players in the NFL for a long time, man. Like, when he's healthy, Tyler Lockett is a 90, 100 catch type of receiver. Like, he's that type of dude. So love it. I love it. Let's hope. Let's hope that Kansas State connection is true. I love it. I love it. I love it. He's a dynamic player in the slot, I believe. So aside from that, nothing crazy from stat lines. I do want to throw out there that Rico Flores team Folsom played Edison. Shaun, they won 65-0. So Rico didn't play too much. So he only had 4 catches for 53 yards, but he didn't really have to do much in this game.
Irish fans, if you are not following Rico Flores on IG, it is a great follow on a daily basis. I'll just leave it at that. He is going to be a character when he comes to Notre Dame. Fans are going to love him. He's
got a great personality, to your points, right? A work ethic too. The kid is a hard worker, and he's averaging like over 110 yards a game so far through 3 games. And that includes just a 4-catch, 53-yarder this week because his team just didn't need him. Like, they just didn't need him against Edison, man. Again, 65-0. So not a massive week. Another good football player. Braylon James's team, Stony Point, beat Killen here this week, 24-16. They are still undefeated, 2-0 on the season. Braylon, again, only had 1 catch, Shaun, but it was for a touchdown, right? So, like, they didn't need him to do, or he didn't do too much in this football game, but he still made a big play, obviously, in a close contest. So, a couple other receivers that we should be very excited about in Braylon James and Rico Flores. Braylon's more of the taller, explosive type of receiver. Rico's more of the little bit smaller, but more explosive in short areas and a really good route runner. Those are the things about Rico Flores that I like a ton. And then the tight ends for this week. Oh, actually, no. Oh, man, I almost skipped over one of the better performances of the week. What am I doing, Shaun? Cam Williams, a guy that you know very well, Glenbard South. They beat Fenton 49-14, so another big victory. 3-0 so far, Cam Williams. Shaun, he only had 2 catches, but those 2 catches went for 52 and a 58-yard touchdown. Yep. So my man had 2 catches for $110 and 2 touchdowns. I know you love Cam Williams, man. 2024 kid, so you're not going to see him for a couple years, Notre Dame fans, but obviously a very talented football player, Shaun.
And he's just coming into himself as a young man. Like, Ryan, you played the game. You know what it is to physically get a summer between sophomore and junior year. And all of a sudden, that junior year, a lot of these kids come back and it's like, yo, he's faster, he's bigger, he's stronger. And that's what we're seeing from the film on Cam Williams. He was a projected high 4.4, 4.5 guy. And now you're watching the film and he's just blowing by defensive backs. And they play in a very competitive league. So I can't wait for them to get into conference play because we're going to really see a lot of things and see how he holds up, because I think they have some really good Power 5 defensive backs in that conference. So I want to see the competition that he's going to be able to face and how he holds up against that competition. And then the explosion. Yep. And he was upset that he didn't score on the jet sweep they gave him.
Oh, yeah. He had another jet sweep for a pretty decent game.
Yeah, for like 23 yards. He was like, I should have scored on that. So this is just the type of kid, his mentality. He wants to dominate. I don't want to say that pressure, but that expectation for that offense has been put on him. Like, yo, you're going to have to carry us until the rest of this young offense is able to come along. And he's been able to hold up to it early in the season.
Yeah, no, it's he reminds me a lot of Lorenzo Styles. Like, I see that type of similar body type, play style. Like, that's what I see. Can do stuff after the catch, but he's got deceptive burners, man. Like, he can run by some dudes, right? So Cam's having a really good start to his season. 7 catches for $120, I think, last week. Then he has the 2 for 110 this week. So I think I said 3-0 to start this little segment. They're 2-0 so far. They've only played 2 football games, but back-to-back 100-yard outputs to start the year. I think last year he had like 600 something yards. So he's already a third of the way to his 2021 total, So he's going to have a really great season. Couple tight ends that were on tap this past weekend. Unfortunately, they both fell to losses. Very close games, though. Jack Larson, 2024 tight end out of Charlotte Catholic, played against Providence Day, which is a very good school there in the Carolinas. And Shaun, they lost 21-20, so a very close game. The quarterback for Providence Day is Jaden Davis, the 2024 quarterback, who's another talented signal caller in that class. Cooper Flanagan. They were up 21-7. De La Salle was up 21-7 over Sarah pretty early in that game. They ended up losing 24-21 from a come from behind. Sarah also beat Folsom 2 weeks ago. So Sarah's off to a good start. And they took down De La Salle. Cooper, neither one of them had like incredible stats. I'll say Jack, the first couple weeks, has been on a really good start to the year. Cooper, we know De La Salle doesn't throw the football a ton. But, Shaun, I didn't get to see the game from De La Salle, but I heard that Cooper was able to play defense this game, which he was not able to do in the first game. And I heard he was a dog, man. So I'm starting to ask myself, could Cooper Flanagan maybe be a defensive end at the next level? I think it's possible, man, because his tape's pretty good on defense as well. So we'll see. Either way, tight ends had not the most impressive weeks of all time, but I think we need to reiterate 2 good football players. Cooper Flanagan's kind of your big 6'5", 240, going to be 255 before you know it, and be that blocking tight end, true inline guy. And then Jack's kind of that moving chess piece that, Notre Dame recruited Kane Barang to kind of be like that type of guy. Tommy Tremble. Think about those types of players, kind of movement-based players. So a couple talented tight ends that were in action that unfortunately their teams did not get the win, but De La Salle has a chance to go against St. Francis next week, who's off to a 1-1 start. Jack actually has a bye week this week. It looks like all the Carolinas have bye weeks this week. So I don't know if that's a usual thing or not, but there we are.
I think it has something to do with this is the start of the hurricane season.
Oh,
I think. So I think I talked to my guy from the Carolinas. It's funny you brought that up because I talked about the last 2 games and I was like, yo, Carolina playoffs look like they're going to be crazy because They win the game against Christian Hamilton's team the week before that went down to the wire. Jaden Davis was able to score with literally 11 seconds in this game to beat Charlotte Catholic. So the competition is hot and heavy. Jaden Davis's team, Providence Day, like you said, at number 1 in the state.
Yep.
Charlotte Catholic's number 4.
Yep.
So yeah. And talking to that, he did let me know that they do that every year in September.
Gotcha.
They go ahead and say, you know what, instead of just games being canceled, the normal weather pattern is that this is the weekend. So strange, but
it's a good note, though.
It's an interesting fact that I found out.
Shaun, I love having you on the podcast, man, because I always learn things. So I love it, man.
By the way,
teach me that
De La Salle, Sarah game was a great
Yeah.
late night watch after
Sure
the Notre
was.
Dame game.
Yeah.
It was a great late night watch.
Sarah's got off to a great start, man. Again, they beat Folsom last week, beat De La Salle this week, two
Yeah.
highly successful programs, right? So
Yeah.
Sarah's off to a really good start. Like you said, shout out, even though he's not in the Notre Dame class, Jane Davis, 2024 quarterback that you just talked about from Providence Day, played a great football game, man. He had like 300 something yards, like 3 or 4 scores. He had a really, really good football game in that one to beat Charlotte Catholic. So shout out to Jane Davis. He really came to show up in that game. All right. And I guess we'll roll through the offensive line. I feel bad every time we're going to do this, Shaun, because it's like offensive line. I'm going to talk about the victories they had and what the offenses did, but you can't point to stats, man. You can't say like, oh, he had 26 pancakes or whatever, right? Like we don't have availability to those stats, but let's roll through it. Unfortunately, Charles Jagusah's team did not get a victory this past week. They lost Quincy Notre Dame 38-0. Alleman is obviously coming off of a victory though last week, and they're going to be traveling to Rock Islands, which is where Charles is from. So it's going to be a little bit of a rivalry game this week. Hopefully Alleman can get back into the winning column after a tough loss to Quincy Notre Dame. Sullivan Absher, we just talked about the Carolinas, right? Out of North Carolina. South Point High School, Shaun, it's off to a good start this year, man. 42-14. They're a 3-0 team right now. I looked it up, and they have averaged in the running game through 3 games 298.3 yards per game, and they have scored 13 touchdowns through 3 contests. So they're doing all right, man. They scored 40-something points a game. Off to a great start, as was Elijah Page and Pinnacle High School out in Arizona. They beat Camino 43-6 in that game. So Pinnacle had a little bit of a down 2021 season, so they're off to a 1-0 start. That was his first game of the season. Sam Pendleton, another North Carolina kid out of Reagan High School, they took on Myers Park, won 17-14. They're off to a 2-1 start as they go into their bye week. Joe Otting had his first game, Hayden High School, against Olpe. I don't know how to pronounce it. Somebody wants to correct me in the chat. OLPE, however you pronounce that. But they won 21-7. Got off to the 1-0 start. They're going to be taking on Silver Lake next week, who is also off to a 1-0 start. So battle of early undefeateds there. And then the last offensive lineman that Notre Dame had that was in action, Shaun, was the 2024 kid, Peter Jones. So I've gotten to know him a little bit out of Malvern Prep. They took on LaSalle College. 35-0 victory for Malvern Prep, which is a very good school in the Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania. I was saying in the Pennsylvania area. Nope, it's not the Pennsylvania area. It's literally in Pennsylvania. So they won 35-0, 175 rushing yards for the team, 104 passing yards. Peter Jones, obviously a big part of that offense, starting right tackle over the last couple years for them. They will take on a good team, Archbishop Wood, next Friday. So that's going to be a big one for them. And I notice I still had this comment up, but you should smash the like button while you're watching this great podcast. I hope you're having fun here so far. So, Shaun, I feel bad. I like the Notre Dame offensive line class they have in 2023. I like Peter Jones. Just what are we going to say too much about him, man? Like we can't quote stats right now. All I'll say is big, impressive kids, though. Big. I mean, we had a question about what 2023 kids could have an opportunity to start early. I'm going to say this, Shaun. I want to hear you if you agree with me. We'll answer this more in depth during the mailbag. But although we've talked about Charles Jagusah needs to take a step up from a technical perspective, which I think he will, I wouldn't be shocked if he starts as a freshman, man, because there's guards did not have a great game first week, and Josh Lugg's going to be graduated. Jared Patterson's going to be graduated. There's going to be an opportunity to start at guard, man. There is, and I think that Charles Jagusah is just such an incredibly talented football player.
Hearing what you just said, who does he start next to, though? Like what combination would you like? Would you like Jagusah Fisher or would you like Jagusah Alt?
I would like Jagusah Fisher because I just want to see them beat up on people all day. If I'm being honest, man, like that's what I want to see. That's what I want to see.
But I totally agree with you. And I think he's open to it. And I think it fits his mentality, because if you watch him play in the interior on the defensive side of the ball, and the way he uses his hands and his strength, he can definitely translate to the interior.
Man, I can't wait to see him. I can't wait to see.
He's already a grappler, right? He's a state champion in wrestling.
Wrestler, yeah, man. No, he's got dynamite feet. He's got dynamite core strength and strong hands too, man. Like he's got some mitts on him. It's just once he figures out how to play the game, he is going to be a dominant. And he could be one of those guys, Shaun. Like I felt like Alabama did it for a couple years, right? Like they had Alex Leatherwood that was in guard, moved over to tackle eventually. Evan Neal was the same thing, started at guard early on, moved over to right tackle, then left tackle. He might be a kid that is like just too good not to play as a freshman, you know, and then eventually he's your left tackle or right tackle after Fisher or Allard are gone. Like that's what I see with Charles Jagusah personally. He's just such a talented football player. So we'll see. All I know is just seeing his just maturation of his body this offseason, man, like some pictures of him. He's a massive kid, man. Just wait till he stops wrestling when he doesn't have to cut to 285 anymore. Kid's going to be 320 before like that. And I honestly, I made this comp before. I don't know if you were I think you may have been on one show where I made this comp, Shaun. He reminds me a little bit of Trey Smith that played at Tennessee, man. Because again, he could play tackle, he could play guard. But like the thing about Trey Smith is he wasn't fat 330. He was just so massive, man. Like he was massive everywhere. And that's what I see with Jagusah. He's just such a big kid, man. He really is. So I like him. I like him a lot, man. I like him a lot. So that's going to put the wraps on the offensive side of football. Actually, no, it's not, because I wanted to talk about another offensive target, Shaun. So that's the commits in the class. I added one player to this piece for this week. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Hannibal running back 2024 Aeneas Williams. All right, Shaun, he had in a 53-28 victory over Jefferson City. Aeneas Williams, 2024 running back. Notre Dame likes him. Went off for 352 yards. Rushing and receiving. And had 8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns. I've never heard of any. I mean, I have heard of that before, but like 8 touchdowns is a silly number, man. 5 rushing, 3 receiving when I talked to Aeneas. Just a really talented all-purpose back. Like, I think that he's going to give you some vibes of Kyron Williams. Like, he looks like that type of dude, and he's a Missouri kid too, so like makes sense the comp, right? But Aeneas Williams had a week, man. 8 touchdowns? 8 touchdowns? That's crazy. Insane, man. Insane. I couldn't believe it. I saw the numbers. I saw the numbers and I was like, I have to include it. And I texted him and he's just like, yeah, man, it was a pretty good game. I'm like, yeah. Pretty good. Pretty good. Sounds like one of the greatest games that anybody will ever play. But yeah, sure.
Every time we talk about a kid from St. Louis, I get sad. Because it's like, oh man, college football has uncovered the St. Louis area. These are all the players that used to come to Illinois. Back in the day, like Illinois just had a straight pipeline from East St. Louis in the St. Louis area, and that's when they were winning championships and contending and at least getting to a respectable bowl that's not connected to a cereal or something like that. And now it's just like, oh boy, Oklahoma and Alabama and everybody's found out about the talent in this area in the Midwest, and now my fighting line, I have no shot. But like you said, you know, whether it's him, just imagine being on the, I don't know, I think it's the St. Louis Dispatch. Just imagine being the high school guy for the St. Louis Dispatch this year. Covering Christian Gray, covering Jeremiah Love, Aeneas Williams, and all the great talent, Ryan Wingo. It's crazy the amount of talent that's coming out of that area right now.
It's really, it's nutty, man. Brandon Plesner just put into the chat that Corey Smith and Aeneas Williams for a 2024 running back call. I'd be completely fine with that, sir. That's a lot of speed, man. That's a dynamic weapon. So all for it, brother. All for it. I know Adam Zilak said Aeneas was at Ohio State this weekend. Yes, he was. He was in attendance for the Notre Dame Ohio State game. Made it to Notre Dame twice, I believe, this spring and summer. So there's some interest there. We'll see what happens moving forward there. There are a lot of programs going after Aeneas Williams now, Shaun. He is a little bit of a later riser, right, comparative to some kids, but because he doesn't play at the highest level, right? Like Hannibal, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, they're not the highest level in his area. So he has dominant stats. I think he had like 40-something touchdowns last year, but people saw him on the camp circuit this spring, in summer. And they're like, oh, Yeah, he could play. He could play. Someone said Ryan Wingo too. Yes. Can't forget about Ryan Wingo in the St. Louis area as well. So that's the offensive side of the football, Shaun. Quickly, we're going to get into the defensive side, and then we're going to start talking a little bit of college football. And we may have a special guest for that college football segment, but we'll leave that until when it happens. So college football, recruiting wise, defensive line, Shaun, we had I think clean sweep across the board. I think all these guys got wins for their team this year. Yeah, they did. All of them got victories. So we had Brendan Vernon. Man, I don't know if Mentor just does not have a very good offense this year, Shaun, but I feel like every game is a really low scoring affair, but they beat Riverside 7-6.
Yeah.
And if you watched that game, because I did get a chance to watch a little bit of that game, Brendan Vernon, like no gaudy numbers, right? But he's just such a difficult player to deal with in the run game, man. Like he's setting the edge, he's shooting gaps inside. Like he's doing a little bit of everything for that defense where he plays a lot of odd front stuff. Yeah. He's a grown man. He is a absolute grown man. Once he really figures it out, I think he's going to be a fantastic football player. So Brendan Vernon's team got off to a victory. Armel Mookum, who is the newest commit to the class out of Woodbury Forest in Virginia, they got their season started off to on a victory note, 26-21 over Flint Hill. So nice start to the season. I talked to Armel yesterday, Shaun. He was very modest that he didn't think he had the greatest game of all time, but I heard that he was creating a little bit of havoc. So I think he might just be a very, nonchalant type of dominating kid. So very interesting football player. Your boy, Brandon Davis-Swain, West Bloomfield, they got another victory, 33-14. Again, I don't think he had dominating stats, but he posted a bunch of clips where like he's just forcing pressure all over the place. I don't know if you want to comment on him a little bit, Shaun, but like Notre Dame has a really good one so far in 2024 with Brandon Davis-Swain, the first commit in the 2024 class.
Yeah, I think watching the game, we talked about this, on the post show early Sunday morning, basically. And when you watch him, you watch that game, and a lot of people questioning, like, where was the pressure? Isaiah Foskey's game and Riley Mills. He's the type of kid that's going to bring what you talked about. You watch his film, Ryan, he already has the counters. So dealing with length, he knows how to attack. Short arm tackle, he knows how to get around the edge. He knows how to bend and get low. You see all of that in this game. And like you said, even if he's not getting the stats, he's getting the pressure, consistent pressure. You like to see that. The competition that he plays against, I wouldn't say is it's good competition. Leave it at that. It's not Texas 6A, competition, but it's good competition up in Michigan. And, he's just a really, really good player, man. I think he's going to be a star at Notre Dame. I really do. There's just certain guys you watch the film and you're like, this dude's the star. It's kind of like the way you think about Jaden Greathouse. Like, forget all of the measurables. Just watch him play. And it's something about him. It's just something about him. And I get the same feeling about Brandon Davis-Swain when I watch him play. It's just something about him. And then the character he has, like people would tweet his highlights and he'll retweet his highlight and then tag a teammate that had a great game and mention his teammate. Like that's the type of guy he is. So great character, great kid. Yeah, I stopped short, because that when you say great character, great kid, most people want to go and say great Notre Dame fit. No. He's a great character, great kid. And that he would be that at any university. I'm happy he's coming to Notre Dame.
Right. Yeah, he would be a great young man and a great addition in any program that wanted him. And there's a lot of programs that still want Brandon Davis-Swain, if we're being very honest with ourselves. I also like that too, Shaun. It's a good note. The one real thing I love about following Ben Minich, especially, is he's a kid that's always like, check out my guy. This guy's a stud. Like, he blows up his teammates way more than he blows himself up, man, which I respect that stuff all the time. So, a couple defensive linemen. Also, this was cool to watch, Shaun. We've been talking about the interior of the defensive line creating a little bit more havoc kind of moving forward. Yeah. Notre Dame has one in 2023 and one in 2024 that I think are pretty interesting players. They both had good starts to their seasons. Devin Houston out of St. James School in Maryland. They played St. Paul's They won 35-13. Houston was credited with four total tackles, 2 tackles for loss in the win. So he made a couple nice stops behind the line of scrimmage. Owen Wafel, who's out of New Jersey. I wish I could have got to this game. I'll get to the Hunt School at some point because they're only like a half an hour from me. They won 48-13 over Mastery. Yeah. Shaun, he had a nice day, man. He had 4 total tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 3 quarterback hurries. So he was all over the place, man, for a really good team. I mean, the Hunt School puts out a lot of talent each and every week. So I mean, each and every year from a college football perspective. So I think he's a good early get for Notre Dame. We've talked a little bit about that one. What's his upside? I think he showed in the first game. He is going to take a bit of a rise, I think, this year. So I think Owen Wafel's a better football player than maybe some people give him credit for. But defensive line, again, all got victories this week. All got off to a good start. Shaun, I know this is Brian's guy at linebacker, and I'm not going to claim him, even though I'm a big fan of him as well. But, man, Jaden Osbury looks like he had a little bit of a growth spurt, man. He looks a little bigger to me, man. He does. And University Lab has back-to-back shutouts the last 2 weeks, 25-0 over Woodlawn this past week. And, Shaun, they even put him at running back, and he scored a touchdown in this game as well, rushing the football. Man, yeah. Jaden Greathouse, he looks like he really put it together from a physical perspective, though, man. He looks bigger. He looks, just kind of filled out a little bit. He is a really talented football player, man. Looking forward to seeing Jaden Greathouse when he gets to Notre Dame.
Look, he looked good. We know how good he is at linebacker, right? I didn't know he was that good at running back. I'm like, oh, this kid is a little bit more athletic. I saw a couple of touchdowns. I saw the one clip of the touchdown he ran in. And, that's Brian's favorite recruit from the 22 class. Like,
sure is.
Talk about it. He can write a dissertation on Mr. Osbury easily. So, yeah, it's good to see. And that's the one thing when we watch these kids every week. That's the great thing about high school football. You get to see them. They're the best players on their team. Their coaches are trying to get them to play on every play to make an impact. So you get to see them in special teams. You get to see them offensively, defensively. And you get to find out certain things like, oh, man, he's a little bit more athletic than I thought. He moves a little bit. Because, of course, structured at linebacker, you see him being, in a play. But then when you put a ball in someone's hands, you get to see certain movements that you might not see as a defender. So, yeah, that was cool to see this week.
Yeah, man. Nah, he got off to a really good start. You know who else got off to a great start? Well, actually, not a great start. It's his 3rd game, but he had a great week this past week. Drake Bowen's Andrean team finally got a victory, man. 30-28 over Crete. I don't know how. Is it Crete Monet? Is that how you pronounce it?
Crete Monet.
Okay. Crete Monet. So 30-28. I saw Andrean was losing pretty early in that game. Drake Bowen did everything for this team, Shaun. Everything for this team. Of course, he's a local kid to Notre Dame. 20 carries, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had a really nice screen pass that he took for 6. He had 2 catches for 60 yards in general. On defense, on top of what he did on the offensive side of football, just 10 tackles, tackle for loss, pass breakup. So Drake Bowen, felt good for him, man, to get the win this week because he is everything for that program, Andrean. He's done a fantastic job the first 3 weeks, and you saw what he did in this game, man. He really had a great game against Crete Monet.
Once again, there's only so much you can see on the defensive side of the ball at linebacker, right? You're looking to see, can they shed blocks? Can they run sideline to sideline? The eye discipline, things like that. But there's something about watching a young man with the ball in his hands. You get to see his movement. You get to see his speed. And that's one thing. If you question Drake Bowen's speed, I tell people all the time, I wouldn't watch this kid play shortstop at third base and make plays coming in that showed his flexibility, his athletic ability, his quickness, his speed. He's stealing bases. It's like, and people are questioning whether or not this young man can run, right? I talked to him. He's ticked off, though, right? You just talk about 3 touchdowns. He put the rock on the ground a couple of times, and he was upset. He's such a young gentleman. He's a Southern gentleman. He's in Indiana now, but he grew up in the South. and he's very much a Southern gentleman. And when you talk to him, you got to man, great game. Yes, sir. But I put the ball on the ground. I can't put the ball on the ground. My team needs me. Like, this is his mentality. Like, yeah, I scored 3 touchdowns, but I can't do that to my team. And he's a leader. And, like, they struggled the first 2 weeks. But now, they're starting to build. And in my conversation with him, we talked about just making sure that Andrean peaks at the right time, even though they started off with 2 losses, so they can repeat as state champs. And that's what he's looking forward to, leading his school back to another state championship.
And I saw someone said, speaking of Southern gentlemen, he also had a little poke at Brian Kelly last night as well, which a few people did. So it was funny. We'll talk about Brian Kelly here in a little bit, though. Let's not get on BK right now. But Shaun, we had someone that asked before I move on. Adam Zillak again. Adam, if I'm pronouncing that last name wrong, please correct me. I apologize. How was Justin Scott? I really hope to add him in the 2024 class. I didn't get any eyes on Justin Scott this week. I don't know if you got a chance to see him.
Yeah, Ignatius, they responded from their loss last week, close loss. And I'll say it like this. Justin Scott and the Wolfpack defense, they were a little irritated, and they took it out on their opponent this week. Their offense woke up. They ended up putting 31 points on the board, and they got a 31-13 victory this week. I'm trying to remember who they played, because they played St. Patrick last week. But they came away with the victory, and Justin Scott was a monster on both sides of the ball. Once again, I know people might not like hearing this, but this kid really loves playing tackle on offense.
Hey, I love it, man.
Every time I talk to him, he's like, man, I love playing offense. And it's like, all right, relax, dude. Relax. We need you at defensive tackle. Relax. Don't fall in love too much. But he knows what side, of the ball that he's going to make his hay in. But he's just really loving playing the time. What would be this is a perfect question, especially for you that you evaluate kids. If you have an interior guy that plays offensively, but the defensive side of the ball is his main thing, flip that. Like, which do you think is the better transition that helps out? Does it help out a tackle better if he plays inside, or does it help a D tackle play better if he plays tackle as well as playing defensive tackle?
I think it's defensive linemen that also play offensive line, I think is for me, because I think it's the ability to read blocks, right? Like that's to be able to see in a set if a guy's vertical setting, or if he's 45-degree setting, or if he's jump setting, or in the run game. Here's a down block. Why is a down block coming? Because there's probably a pulling guard that's coming off his butt, right? Like those are the types of things. So I think reading blocks for me is big time, Shaun. Like, honestly, though, like I like players that play both sides of the football just in general, because they're pretty well-rounded players, right? They've kind of it's like having a tight end that played quarterback, right? Even I know that's not the different side of the ball, but it's the ability to just kind of see things from a different vantage points, right? Yeah. Like that's different for me, right? Like, and I think you see a lot of there's a lot of safeties in college football that were also like high school quarterbacks. So they know how to read coverages, right? Like they know, well, not even read coverages. They know how to read passing concepts. They understand why a receiver is tacking here and what is coming and what's the progression through routes and all that type of stuff, right? So I really think it's having a defensive lineman that has also played offensive line. I think it's just the ability to read blocks and understand why are they doing the things they do, right? Like it's the process stuff for me. That is huge. So good note there on, and I think you also see like any player that usually football players that are well-rounded players or ability to play early are usually guys that have played a lot of different positions in a lot of different football, right? So like that's very interesting. We had a weird question. Well, not a weird question. I apologize, Jack. Jack just wanted to know, Jack Foot wanted to know what I'm drinking in my cup. So Jack, I think you'll always see me with the same type of color here. It's strawberry lemonade. That's what I'm sipping on, man. It's my thing. It's my thing. So Shaun, let's go now. So we talked a little defensive line. We're working through the linebackers. We actually finished up the linebackers because Preston Zinter is not playing his first football game until next week. So the Massachusetts guys, him and Boubacar Traore, are going to be kicking off their season next week. Last spot we want to go to before we get into college football is the secondary, man. And again, some impressive performances here. Very impressive. Micah Bell, cornerback out of Kincaid School in Texas. They took on Tomball Christian Homeschool, and I may be pronouncing Tomball. I don't know how to pronounce it, but they got off to a 30 to 14 victory, which of course was off of a first week loss. So Kincaid School got off to now a 1-1 record. Shaun, he had 129 yards rushing and a touchdown on 18 carries. So, of course, he is used more for his ability as a runner than he is on the defensive side of the football. He does play defense as well for Kincaid, but he made, obviously, a huge impact on the offensive side of the ball. Christian Gray, I felt bad for Christian Gray, man, because they had to welcome IMG Academy into Dismissed Jesuit this week. And, unfortunately, it was a 50-6 loss by Dismissed Jesuit. Again, Christian Gray, fantastic football player. He could play with those IMG kids. It's just, we don't have to say anything, right? Like that's a boarding school for 4- and 5-star recruits. Like, let's call it what it is, right? So, fortunately, did not get the victory in that one. Also had Peyton Bowen, who, Shaun, I think Denton Geyer is on a quest for some revenge against Westlake this year, man.
I think so. If there was a high school game I would pay and travel to go see, it would be that playoff matchup. Like, when they face each other, it's like, okay, let me go ahead and buy this ticket, go down here for one day just to make sure I see this. It might be the best high school game of the year. I have to look at it.
Might be.
But it might end up being the best game of the year.
Especially because last year, Westlake took it to him, man. It was like 40-21 in that final, but Geyer looks hungry, man. Again, they got a 44-14 over Aledo. And that game was never close, man. Aledo's a decent little team. Like, they're not bad. And Denton Geyer just like shut the door quick on them, man. And nobody even did anything that crazy in that game from a Notre Dame perspective. Like, Peyton was good, like he always is. But the star of that show was Jackson Arnold. He threw for 361 yards and 4 touchdowns, and also had another rushing touchdown. Of course, he commit to Oklahoma quarterback. So, yeah, it was a nice day for the Denton Geyer football team. Adon Schuler, who I'm getting out to an Irvington game actually soon, Shaun. They beat a good program here in New Jersey's Millville. They beat them 25-17. Of course, Irvington won their state championship last year. Yeah. So they're off to a 2-0 start. Adon Schuler, man, I'm going to say this. People are terrified of Adon Schuler. They're trying to get away from him. They're trying to go away from him. They are. But, I put a clip in there. He had a massive hit in this game running the alley. He also is the team's punt returner, and he had a big punt return to get his team into scoring an opportunity. Don Schuler is just one of the most underrated football players in the country, and especially in the Notre Dame class. And then speaking of underrated, Ben Minich, Lakota West took down Sycamore 59-7. Man, Minich was all over the field, Shaun. Tackles. He had a sack in this game. He plays offense, catches the football, plays special teams. Ben Minich does everything for this football team, Lakota West. So again, the secondary all got victories, and they all came to play, man. And I'm excited to see this group together. I think they're going to be really good together.
Dakota West safety combination or Denton Geyer safety combination? Who are you taking?
Say that one more time. Let me think.
Dakota West safety combination.
Yep.
Or Denton Geyer's safety combination.
I would probably go Denton Geyer.
Ben Minich is playing next to
Malik Harford's a beast. Yeah,
he's a
beast.
He is.
Yeah.
But Yates and Bowen are pretty good for Denton Geyer.
They are. Is Yates playing full-time safety this year? I know he was playing a lot of corner last year.
I think he was playing safety from what I heard early in the season.
I would probably take Geyer just slightly then, because I think Peyton Bowen has enough talent to be in contention as the best safety in high school football when it's all said and done. Again, I think Caleb Downs is number one right now by a decent margin, but Bowen's got that type of upside. Ryan Yates is just a really good, solid football player. I don't think he's anything special. Malik Harford's a dude, more of a hitter comparative to Peyton Bowen's rangy overall center fielder type, right? And Ben Minich is a good football player, though. Yeah. I think the conversation comes down to who do you value, Minich over Yates. Ryan Yates, and I think it's a close one. I don't know. It's close. It's close. Yeah. We also had a super chat here, Shaun, I want to get to, and we're about to move on to our college football talk here in just a couple minutes. Stephen F. put out a super chat for us. Thank you again, Stephen. What is the feeling on Peyton Bowen? So I'm going to take this from two different angles, Shaun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming that he's asking Peyton Bowen's solidity a word? So, whatever. How solid he is to Notre Dame's class. And Stephen, we've put this on the board probably like 3 weeks ago now at this point. So you should join boards.irishbreakdown.com if you haven't already. But as of right now, we feel solid with where Peyton Bowen is. Things can change, of course, but right now I'm not overly concerned about Peyton Bowen. I think that he's kind of settled some of my nerves early on in that one, if I'm being completely honest. And what are our feelings on Peyton Bowen? I mean, Shaun, do you want to start it off, man? Like, great football player. Great football player.
I'll jump it off. Look,
yeah.
I keep tabs on Peyton Bowen through the 23 recruits. He has not disconnected. He has not dropped out of the group chats. He still is a part of their video game club that they have going between Drake, Adon, Peyton, Christian Gray. He's still part of the crew. Until I hear him disconnect from the crew, like I heard Keon had disconnected from the crew after his Alabama visit, and I started to say, okay, this might start to get tricky. I don't worry about it, right? I just don't. And I think, a lot of people are worried about NIL and some other things. Jackson Arnold, his quarterback, one of his good friends on his team, Denton Geyer, is going to Oklahoma. Oklahoma is one of the teams that's trying to get him to decommit and flip. If Notre Dame holds up, this is the important thing. This is why this is so important, right? I'm sure you guys will get to this during the rest of the week during the shows. This is why you can talk about coaches. You can talk about text messages, building relationships. One of the best resources in recruiting is what your team puts on the field each and every week. Because the young men are watching your team. And if Peyton Bowen watched Brandon Joseph and he watched that defense under Al Golden on Saturday night, you feel really good about what he saw. And you feel good about what he's going to continue to see as the season moves on. So as it sits right now, I feel good. But, he has the right to change his mind. I mean, if it happens.
And Shaun, can I interrupt this for a second? Because it's a great point. We have a question that we're going to talk about in the mailbag about, just what are the impact of the Notre Dame's performance in the first game, right?
Yeah.
I'll say this, man. Notre Dame just held one of the best offenses we've seen in several years to 21 points, and they were a dominant defensive fixture, despite the fact that guys like Isaiah Foskey and Jason Adamalola didn't have their best games, right? No. And they still balled, man, and they still played a really good defensive game. So I think there's a lot of defensive football players in the 2023 class, 2024 class that are going to come out of that game and say, I want to be a part of that. Yeah. Heck yeah, I do. Yeah. Why wouldn't I want to be Brandon Joseph? Like we heard Peyton mentioned the first time I talked to him about Kyle Hamilton, right? Like Kyle Hamilton set the standard at the safety position. I want to be that. Yeah. Well, do you think seeing how Brandon Joseph played during that football game hurt his chances of wanting to be that dude? Like, yeah. And also, Brandon Joseph's also a Texas kid. So he's out of College Station originally. So I'm just saying, man, there's like some layers to it that we're going to keep evaluating. We'll see how it works out. But either way, that's going to conclude this portion of the podcast. A great question again from Steven. We appreciate the super chat with that one. This is going to end the high school recruiting portion of this show. Next, we'll be diving in to our little bit of a college football roundtable.
Boys, it's about to be good.
All right, Shaun. So we're going to get into some of these college football games. Don't want to sound salty or petty here, but we're going to start with the game that we saw last night, Sunday Night Football.
Yes.
LSU was in action, Shaun, and they took on Florida State, which in theory you're like, okay, that's two of like the very premier programs college football historically, right? Yes. I mean, at least for, better part of the last, the near future.
Whoa.
Uh-oh.
Did y'all really think you were going to get to talk about LSU, Florida State without me? Did y'all really think that I was going to sit on the sidelines for this one?
We kind of thought since it was the show we were hosting, it might happen, but lo and behold, here you are.
Fellas, do you mind?
Man.
Do you mind if you guys can grant me this one little thing? Can I please join y'all to talk a little bit about LSU and Florida State last night, please? Please.
Of course you can, Brian. I think I agree with Ed 3 here, though. We should have had some intro music ready for this one, man. As you made your entrance into this.
I would have been the old DX stuff. Are you ready? You know what I mean? Like, are you ready?
Nice.
That would have definitely been my intro for this one, man. Let's go.
Brian, yeah. Let's kick it off here. So for people that didn't see the game, 24-23 was the final. Florida State got the victory in this one. LSU scored a touchdown with no time left on the clock. They went for the extra point, obviously, went for one, and field goal got blocked. So Brian Kelly's tenure gets off to a 0-1 start against Florida State. I feel like we can start this conversation in a lot of different ways here, Brian. So let's just kick off with some of your general thoughts, and we'll take it from there.
I tried to tell him. I tried to tell him about Polian. I tried to tell him about Kelly. I tried to talk about not being ready emotionally in big games. I tried to tell them about all of it, and they didn't want to listen. They didn't want. You get all in their feelings about me saying they're dumpster fires, their best players, getting all salty and mad and getting into beefs with the coach on the sidelines. I tried to tell them about, look, big games, you're not going to do it. I mean, he could barely beat Florida State last year with Notre Dame's players. He's going to beat them with Florida State's. And I'm going to say something to y'all. I actually like that it ended the way that it did, as opposed to Florida State just scoring and putting it away, because it showed even more what Brian Kelly is all about as a coach, guys. It's just like, did you not just get like reminiscent of like 2014 Northwestern, with like, you're just inventing ways to lose. You fumble 2 punts, and you have 2 kicks blocked, Mr. I'm the head coach, special teams runs through me. Gee, I'm glad this is my favorite, best assistant, Brian Polian, coming with me. You know what I mean? Like, it just was so poetic. And then to just watch that blank stare on the sidelines as everything was going on, as he talks to no one the entire game, was just it was like, I just kept saying, like, I tried to tell y'all, I did it nicely. I tried to tell y'all, I went on your shows after he was hired, and I tried to be nice about it and say, look, this is why I hammered this guy. And fellas, last night was exactly what is a team. They lost to a mediocre Florida State team. Florida State tried to give them that game. You're giving up pressures on 3-man pass rushes. Come on now. You get Keyshawn Boutte doesn't catch his first pass till the fourth quarter. Mr. Mr. We got great receivers. Come on now. I tried to tell him, fellas, that this is who Brian Kelly is. And you know what I kept thinking to myself afterwards? Get used to it.
Sorry, I almost choked on my drink. That was great. We had Cassidy Johnson, Brian, who said you can't blame Kelly in his first year. He has to rebuild them like he did at Notre Dame, Brian.
Hey, you know what, Cassidy? I get it. I get the sentiment that LSU fans have. I truly do, which is why I tried to warn them. I tried to warn you. Get used to making excuses for why you don't play well. It's going to be something. It's always something. And it's look, I mean, it's always something. And look, you played Florida State, who hasn't had a winning record in how long? How many years has this been since Florida State has had a winning record? Who did Mike Norvell replace? He replaced Willie Taggart, right?
Yes.
Did Willie Taggart ever have a winning record at Florida State? Because Mike Norvell's in year 6
maybe.
right?
He may have gone 6.
So he went. Let's see. They fired him in 2019. They ended up going 6-7 that year. So they didn't have a winning record in 2018. Let's see here. The last time they had a winning record was 2017, and they had a wonderful, masterful 7-6 season under Jimbo Fisher. Okay, so you lost in the Superdome in your backyard in a game where you got dominated the entire game. You can't tell me, well, we don't have good enough players. Did you watch those guys in the fourth quarter? Right? Where was that all game? And that's what we've been saying for years. right? So you can say all you want about got to rebuild and all this kind of stuff. I'm sorry. You lost in the Superdome. You had the whole offseason to prepare how to field a punt, right? You had a whole offseason how to block a PAT. That's the most simplified thing in football. Block a PAT. Game on the line, you gave up a blocked PAT. I'm sorry. That's not rebuilding, folks. A lot of teams will put walk-ons in those spots, right? You can't handle a punt, right? And the players look tight. They look tight early in the game. They look tight in big moments. And guess what? That's a Brian Kelly trademark. That team was not emotionally ready to play. And that's why they lost to an unranked Florida State team. And the fact that you got to try to justify Notre Dame losing to the number 2 team in the country on the road and somehow equate that to losing to Florida State in New Orleans, come on now. But as I'm saying, Shaun, get used to it, because this is not going to be the last time this is going to be used as an excuse.
Oh, we're going to have about 2 or 3 more examples during the season, especially
minimum
the conference. Oh boy,
minimum.
LSU.
3 bullet points here. Slow start, like Brian pointed out. Get to the halftime interview, he blames his players. Where have we seen that before?
12 years.
Yeah.
I don't think we can play worse. I don't know, though. This is my first year.
Yeah.
First game.
Out-coached again by Mike Norvell 2 years in a row. Okay.
Good point. Mike Norvell, who might not make it after the year either, but that's another conversation.
Oh, Lord. They try to get in that game.
Brian Polian strikes again. Where have we seen that before?
Yep.
Huh?
Yep.
Oh, quarterback actually plays better when he doesn't have to listen to the coaching. And he just goes out and plays. Where have we seen that before? I mean, look, as much as you call IB, Brian Driscoll, myself at times, haters, sour grapes, you want to talk about him, the winningest coach all time, and you wanted to ignore all the embarrassing losses in big games. This is who he is. When someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Yes.
Believe them. It doesn't matter if they
That's a good line. That's a good line, Shaun. I'm going to steal that.
It doesn't matter if they're, especially with you watching film, Ryan, when they show you who they are, believe them.
I'm this guy, man.
When he has good talent, that's who he is. When he has better talent, that's who he is. If you gave him great talent, that would be who he is.
Brian, I think you phrased it perfectly, right? Rebuilding, sure. It's not an incredibly talented roster, which is why they had to go to the transfer portal so much this offseason, right? But you said it perfectly in the sense that, but it's how the players were prepared for the game, right? It's how they were tight, how they weren't loose, how they seemed to shrink in the biggest moment of the games, and how they got off to such a slow start in this football game. Like, those are the things, man. Like, that has nothing to do with talent or maturation.
Right.
That's a coaching problem.
You can't handle punts. Can't handle a punt. And they had to go to the transfer portal. Who was the dude that dominated for Florida State's defense last night?
Jared Verse.
Where was he playing in 2000? He's playing for Greg Gattuso in 2021, my former boss. Right. So they had to go to the transfer portal too. And again, you're talking about a team that's coming off of a losing season as well. This is a team. Well, let's put it this way. In the last 2 years, Jacksonville State has more wins over Florida State than LSU does. I mean, this is the deal, right? This is the deal. And you can say, well, he's got to rebuild. Hey, guys, I remember a team in 2015 that was loaded with tons of first, second, and third round draft picks. Matter of fact, I think the starting offense that year, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, left tackle, left guard, center, right tackle, 7 players on the starting offense alone that were first, second, or third round picks, and they lost to Clemson by 2. And what happened in that game? Shanked punt that set up a touchdown for Clemson. Sound familiar? Fumbling a kick return that sets up an opposing team's score. Sound familiar? big games, big moments, and your team isn't going to be ready to play, especially on special teams. And that wasn't even Brian Polian in 2015.
Yeah.
What was the common theme from that team to this team? It wasn't Brian Polian, who y'all know I'm not a fan of, and I think he's a very average coach at best. It was the common theme was Brian Kelly. Because one thing LSU fans we haven't been telling them about that we probably should have warned them a little bit more is this cat doesn't think special teams is all that important based on how he structures his practices. And you saw evidence of that last night, right? It cost you a game.
Brian, this is like the point blank to it. I was talking to someone about this, and for everyone that, I mean, like I've only been in Iowa Breakdown since January full time, right? But if you talk to anybody that's been around me for the last 12 years, I wasn't a Brian Kelly guy. I never really was. I mean, when they first hired him, I was like, cool, give him a chance, whatever, you know. I will say this is not only are you going to have some of the shortcomings, he's also just not a likable person, right?
No.
Like that's the point blank to it. It's not likable. I'll say it like this. If Brian Kelly did what he did and was also a likable person, you probably would feel a little bit different about him. It's still not good enough because you're still not winning the big football games, but like he also couples that with like, he's not a very, like, I don't want to say nice, but like, he's not a likable guy, right? Like,
I don't care if he's nice or not. Is a guy likable or not? You don't have to be nice to be likable. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like Nick Saban. You don't think he's overly likable, but I respect the heck out of him. You know, I mean, it's whatever. I just don't. But this is who we knew this is who they're going to be, right? I mean, and they'll go probably beat up on Southern next week. Although I've had some people tell me, don't assume that they're just going to go smash Southern next week. I guess Southern's got a pretty good team this year.
Southern can always put points up on the board.
Yeah, who's their head coach now, Shaun? Do you have any idea?
Southern, I'm not sure. They just
because I heard they put up like 84 on somebody last week, which is nuts.
They have a pretty good defensive end too, Jordan Lewis. So they got a couple guys on that team, man. It's not too bad.
I'm gonna look up and see who their coach is because I know Hugh Jackson's at Grambling, right? They had Dawson.
He's at Grambling.
Odoms.
Yep.
Okay. No, that's Norfolk State. I'm sorry. Let's see your football coaches from Southern. Who the head coach is? Eric Dooley is the head football coach there. He's in the 20th year, so he's been there for 20. No, he's the 20th head football coach. So he's a new hire. Let's see where he was. So let's see here. Okay. So he was at Prairie View A&M from 18 to 21. He was the OC at Grambling State from 14 to 17. So and it looks like he played at Southern. So all I know is they put up a mess of points this past weekend, fellas. 86 to nothing.
That's
so
crazy,
rush for 398 yards, pass for 215 yards. That's a pretty good day's work. Gave up a grand total of 92 yards of offense. Who did they play? Goodness gracious. Florida Memorial? Who the heck is that?
That's probably, is that a Division II team? It's got to be.
I think so. Never heard of that team before.
Florida
Memorial.
I'll definitely say traditionally, as far as the HBCUs, Southern has always been known for their wide receivers and their quarterbacks. They've been known for the wide receivers and cornerbacks, and their linebackers are pretty good.
You know who went to Southern? You remember Aeneas Williams, Hall of Famer?
Yeah.
He went to Southern.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's a good football player. Really good football. I mean, great football player. But so
this is who Brian Kelly is, fellas. That's back to the whole point. This is who he is, right? He is just that guy. Your teams will not be mentally ready to play. And if you couldn't get mentally ready to play this game, you're like, here's the thing, like you almost would justify it if it was against like some nobody. Right. You know, and let's say you had some good team some not really great team this week. You know, you're playing, I don't know, some team that's not good, and then you're looking ahead and you got Florida State next week. How are you not ready to play Florida State? I mean, just on name and reputation alone, fellas, how are you not ready to play that game? And how many times have we asked ourselves that very question? And that's my point. How many times have we said to ourselves, covering Brian Kelly for all these years, how are they not ready for that game? How could they possibly not ready for that game? And I have one simple response for the people who say Brian Kelly was the winningest coach at Notre Dame. He also lost more games than any coach in the history of Notre Dame. Stop talking to me about longevity awards.
Yeah,
right?
It's a longevity. It's not excellence. It's longevity at that point.
Eighth in winning percentage of coaches who stayed at least 5 years in Notre Dame. Eighth.
Yeah.
Ty Willingham has a better win percentage against top 25 teams than Brian Kelly does. I don't think I need to say anything else other than that.
Well, I'll even do it like this, Brian, because like Frank Gore was a running back in the NFL for a long time, and he was a good football player to a very good football player through the course of his career. But I mean, he's second all time in leading rusher now in NFL history. Is he the second best running back of all time? Absolutely not. It's a longevity thing, man. Like it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter if we're being honest. But I mean, like you said, he has the most losses, and his winning percentage isn't overly impressive either. So yeah, agree.
But on a petty level, though. I mean, I enjoyed that very, very much last night.
Oh, absolutely.
I did. And I got so annoyed. I was like, Florida State's going to choke this game away. And they try. Why are you running a toss on the, and Jordan Travis was hot on the sideline.
Sure was.
He was hot. Like, I might have just flat out checked out of that if I was him. Like, you know what? Forget that. We're not running that. He was hot. Why are you running a toss play at the 1 yard line?
Travis had a nice game too, man. He had a nice game.
He did hit a really good game.
Yeah.
I think shout out to, we talked about this, Brian. Mike Denbrock had a pretty good second half.
Once they fell behind,
but see that
Kelly took the handcuffs off the offensive coordinator, and look what happened.
And look what happened look how well Jaden Daniels played once the handcuffs were taken.
And that's what he does, right? Like he'll give you this game plan. He wants you to be conservative and all this kind of stuff, and then you fall behind, and then he lets you go. And then what are LSU people come? Oh, it's Mike Denbrock's fault. Here we go. It's never Brian Kelly's fault.
Yep.
I tried to tell him. This is who he is.
I stayed off of Twitter too, Brian. All I know is, did you see Dylan Gibbons tweet?
Oh my God, no fake accents in this locker room. Oh my Lord, have mercy. Thank you, Dylan Gibbons.
Oh man, I haven't watched his film yet at Florida State, but I'm going to give him a first round grade just because of that. Just because of that.
That troll, and he does some wonderful stuff with his NIL. Some wonderful help the community stuff with his NIL, which I absolutely love that kid for that. But yes, it was a wonderful troll job. And look, I mean, LSU, I mean, we could have a conversation about who was the more talented team on the field last night. I didn't outside of Jared Verse, do you see a lot of first round draft picks for Florida State? I saw several first round talents for LSU though. So you can't give me the whole, they didn't have talent. Florida State, y'all, they went 5-7 last year. You know, like, come on now.
You mentioned it earlier, Brian, but I mean, Keyshawn Boutte was visible most of the night. It wasn't because of Keyshawn Boutte that he was invisible most of the night, if we're being honest. I mean, that kid's a great football player.
I'm very curious if the last night was the last night he's ever going to play.
I mean, he deleted everything off of his Twitter, apparently, so we'll see, man.
His Instagram, he completely scrubbed of LSU stuff.
Could you imagine if that happened? I mean, this is speculation, but they gave him the number 7 jersey, too, right? Like, that means something at LSU. Could you imagine if he was just like, nah, I'm good. I'm all right after that.
Yeah,
I'm good.
I kind of like something you'd expect to see from a program that's a dumpster fire, don't you think? Like, to have something like that happen, you know, I'm just like hypothetically, you know, something that you might think, Brian, you know, that kind of thing. So,
Brian, they're not a dumpster fire. Sure. You just need to give LSU 12 years. We'll see what happens. All right, just give them 12.
Give them 12 years, and he'll become the school's all-time winningest coach there too. Because
they might need to give him a 2-year extension at some point. And then we'll get to 12.
This is how bad it is. He got out-coached by a guy that thought it was a good idea to throw a toss on the 1 yard line, and then when he had a situation where LSU, because of the review, had to immediately snap the ball in a frenzy, Mike Norvell took that away from his defense and decided to call a timeout.
Right. And went prevent defense with 1:26 and 2 timeouts left on the other team.
Yes.
I mean, it was just like you're giving them a touchdown there.
And that's the coach you lost to.
That's right.
That's the coach you lost to.
That's right. A guy that has a Jacksonville State loss on his resume.
Yeah.
You know,
Right, I'm surprised you didn't do a show last night after the game. I'm surprised.
I thought about it.
Did you reach out to your guy to come back on the show?
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna have me back on the show now.
Maybe after
he took the L during the show and then ran to Twitter to then get his tough juice going out on Twitter. But no,
we should start a Twitter petition.
Yeah,
to get Beatrice back on the show, guys. Let's go to his
far,
Twitter.
far better things to do
Let's
with
go to
my
his Twitter
time
page.
than go on those
Petition to
LSU
get
shows.
D. Driscoll back on the show just to see what he says.
Oh, good for you. Good for
I
you.
wanted to bring this up too, because Tyler Binge said that he wanted to, Brian, that you have to give some props to Drake Bowen's troll job last night as well.
Did you see what Drake
so.
tweeted?
I saw it briefly. Yeah, I did.
Oh,
I woke up to that one.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, Ryan went to bed a little bit early last night.
Yeah, man.
So yeah, let me find the actual tweet by Drake, because it was savage. It was absolutely savage. I just absolutely loved it. He tweeted. I just want to say it specifically because it was phenomenal. Is it still? Did he take it down? I wonder if they asked him to take it down.
Oh, really? That's sad.
Yeah. Let me see here. Maybe it's on the other one. Let me see here. Oh, here we go. So let me just. I'm going to share it so y'all can see it, because this is just wonderful. I just thought this was great by Drake. So you said, you guys see that?
Yeah. It's a little small, but I can read it.
Yeah.
Can't wait to get to Notre Dame, where we have resources to win. # Freeman era.
And of course, the first person that tags him is someone.
Man, he got over 3,000 likes for that one too.
Can't wait to get to Notre Dame, where we have the resources to win. I just loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And he said it around 10:58.
You know that was right after.
It was before the game was over.
Yeah.
It was when Florida State had taken a big lead. And props to Florida State, though, last night, in all seriousness, though. I'll say something about this, and this is, I'm taking shots at Brian Kelly, and I'm having fun with it. But in all seriousness, Florida State last night, fellas, had multiple opportunities to fold in that game. And look, there was some bad play calling, or some bad, the toss was a bad decision. The go and prevent, with the minute 26 and the other team having 2 timeouts was a horrible decision. But Mike Norvell's team was ready to play physically last night. They battled, they came out quick, and LSU a couple times. Oh, by the way, we also forgot to get the whole, you can't finish off a drive. You take that early drive down and you have to settle for field goals. It's another conversation. Mm-hmm. But when LSU scored to go make it 17-10, you kind of like, uh-oh, like you've been letting this team hang around the whole game. And then to see Florida State kind of go down and then answer right back. And then LSU goes down and scores again. And then Florida State marches it. Oh, we forgot to mention that Florida State benefited from being able to start at the 40, because an LSU kid hit a Florida State kid in the head and got a 15-yard penalty, when you're trying to get a stop and get the ball back and tie it. Then Florida State goes down and responded again, and props them. Now, again, the dumb play call. But then the other thing, too, is how many times have we seen kids just not even try on a blocked extra point? Just like, it is what it is. Extra point, let's go to overtime. No, but they didn't. They went after it. And so that's the thing that that's what you've been wanting to see from Florida State, right, guys? It's never been a talent problem with Florida State. It's always been a culture problem.
Yeah.
And last night we saw kids that went into LSU's backyard and said, no, we are Florida State. We are from the Panhandle. This is our city now. And every time LSU tried to answer, Florida State answered right back, fellas. And so I gained a lot of respect for how well Mike Norvell had his team ready to play last night. They did not have they made some poor coaching decisions last night. But those Florida State kids stepped up and played hard and did what they needed to do. And man, I got to tell you guys, it was good to see, because we've said this before. I want to see Florida State good again. I want to see Florida good again. I want to see Miami good again. It's good for Notre Dame if those teams are good, because then they start taking players away from LSU and Bama and Georgia and teams like that. So it's good for those guys to be good. But yes, props to Florida State. Now, here's the question, guys, as we talk about this. I'm going to let you guys go after this so you can get back to what you're going to do. And I appreciate you. Ryan was like, we're going to talk about it for a couple minutes. Like, no. I'm going to talk about it a little longer. I really want to see what they do now, because they have a bye week, and then they head on the road to Louisville. Louisville got smashed this weekend by Syracuse. Smashed. I don't know if y'all saw that. 31-7 they lost to Syracuse. Mm-hmm. Then Florida State's at home against BC. We saw what happened with BC to Rutgers. I feel bad for Phil and Garwo and Zay Flowers and George Tackers, who balled out, because that offensive line is horrible. Mm-hmm. But they get BC at home, and then they get Wake Forest at home. we could look at a situation if Florida State handles this correctly, where they go into October 5-0, fellas, and ranked.
Yeah.
Right. And then we get to hear Florida State's better than we thought they were excuses from LSU fans. But in all seriousness, this is big. This was big for Mike Norvell if he's going to look to rebuild this program. They've needed right, Shaun, wouldn't you agree? They've needed a signature win to really get them to believe that, hey, we are Florida State. And I don't care. It's like what we said about when Notre Dame beat LSU in the bowl games. Guys, I don't care what their record is. It's still LSU. It's still a game that's going to give you confidence in yourself as a program. And if they can build on it, and they've got a bye week to kind of rest up and build on it before they head to Louisville, if they can build on it, man, you could see Florida State start taking those big steps back, which then makes the ACC a lot. If Florida State's good and Miami's good, the ACC all of a sudden becomes formidable because Clemson's still going to be good. So, and they both look good this weekend.
Nothing better for your confidence than actually doing it, right?
Right.
And that's what they say. There's nothing better for your confidence than actually doing it. So you talk about Mike Norvell and his ability to get that signature win. Players, coaches, they both want to get better and they need to get better, right? Marcus Freeman is going to become a better coach when he gets his signature win.
Right.
Like if he beats Clemson, he's going to become a better coach that day.
Right.
And he's going to be a better coach going into USC into the next season. So it's about doing it. When you get the opportunity, you do it. Then you can do it the next time, and you get better, and you keep going to the next level. So he had a signature win last night. For that to be pretty much, that was a road game. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah. That was a road game.
Yes, it's in New Orleans.
Absolutely, that's a road game. To take Florida State on the road and to win that game. Big time. And they were close in multiple games last year in the conference.
And that's what you and I talked about on that RTCF show when we were previewing the ACC was this was a different bad Florida State team record-wise, especially late in the year because they were more competitive last year. 3-point loss to Notre Dame, 3-point loss to Jacksonville State, 8-point loss to Louisville, 3-point loss to Florida. Yeah.
It was situational football, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't it amazing? Like you tell your kids to play 60 minutes, or what is it in high school? 48 minutes.
48, yeah.
48 minutes. Like play a full game, but most football games against good teams come down to like 3 to 5 plays.
Mm-hmm.
Like, play the full 60, play the full 48. But these 5 plays are going to be the most important plays that decide the game. And, the teams and the players and the coaches that can do the best job in those plays usually win the game. So, unfortunately, LSU is going to have to get used to being on the other side of being the team and the coach that does not get the job done in those 3 to 5 plays.
Yep. Well, guys, I'm going to let you get back to your breakdown. I appreciate you allowing me to join your show and kind of have some fun. Have some fun making fun. So I really appreciate that. That was enjoyable. So
yes.
I did want to thank Wade Garrett too, guys, here real quick before you move on. Wade Garrett, thank you for the super chats and owning up on my lost bet. No 41-40 victory. On to the next game. Have a great Labor Day, everyone. Yes, very much. Everybody have a great Labor Day. Shaun, Ryan, keep doing a great job. You guys are killing the show today. Thank you all so much for letting me be a part of it. See you guys later.
Thank you, Brian. All right, well, Shaun, let's move on to a different game. We spent a lot of time on that one, obviously. So let's go to this one. Was a game that, if you looked at our weekly predictions that we do here at Irish Breakdown, none of us thought this game was going to be very close, but it was even more of a lopsided affair than I think most of us thought, and that was the Georgia game. Take it all, number 3 Georgia, which I don't know if you agree with this, Shaun, but we've talked about this a ton. I still would have had Georgia as the number 1 team going into the year just because they're the defending national champions, that's just my opinion. But so they are number 3 in the country. They took on Oregon, who's number 11. And I mean, Shaun, this game wasn't even close, man. Like 49-3. But if you watch the game, it was even worse than that, man. Like this was a terrible, terrible game. Georgia, first and foremost, we talk about the difference between rebuilding and reloading. Georgia reloaded. They got some dudes, man. Like you lost Zamir White and James Cook off that team at running back, and you brought in Kenny McIntosh and Kendall Milton.
Yeah.
Like that's your guys. Kenny McIntosh had 9 catches for over 100 yards as a running back yesterday.
Yeah.
Or on Saturday, I should say.
Yeah.
And Stetson Bennett played a great football game. And this defense, again, Shaun, I mean, like, again, they lost a lot off of that defense. Talked about that a ton. But who is this freshman corner that they had, man, that had that sick interception? I'm just like, what the? I mean, I know who he is because he was like a 5-star kid. So I'm not like, oh my God, who's that kid? Never heard of him. But it's still like he comes in and he's just ready to play. You know, like he's just that dude already. So he looks like he's he's gonna be the next big thing type of thing. But man, George is good, Shaun. I mean, they're good, man. Give hats off to Kirby Smart here. Won the championship, and there were some questions of like if there would be any type of setback or step back, I should say. I don't think there's going to be. I think they're going to be a very good football team. I think they're going to defend for a playoff berth. They're again going to be a very good football team, in my opinion.
Look, I don't know if anyone has seen the video that went viral late Friday. Kirby Smart was talking to his team last week, and he was telling them that we will not be the hunted in college football. We are the hunters, and we're going to continue to hunt. And the speech was like maybe a minute and a half, but it was like, yo, that's pretty good stuff. If I was one of his players right now, I would be ready to go to war. And it's like, I watched the game and I said, yo, I have to remember to ask Ryan this question. Because I saw the clip that you retweeted, the Jalen Carter tweet.
Oh my God.
Oh, that clip. I was like, oh my God, why did you play the guard like that? What is going on? Like, you know who they lost inside last year to the NFL. And you replace those two with this kid? It's like, okay.
What? I'll say this, Shaun. He was the best defensive lineman on that team last year, in my opinion. But now you're just like, he's got the full spotlight on him, man. He is just, Jalen Carter is a dumb football player, man. And I mean dumb as in like not fair, not actual IQ dumb. Like he is just he's, Shaun, honestly, and people are going to be like, whoa, chill out, man. He reminds me of Warren Sapp, man. Like he does. Like he looks like him. He plays like him. It is insane. I'm not saying he's going to be Warren Sapp, a future a Hall of Fame football player. But what I'm telling you is that kid is a freaky athlete for his stature and his size, man. Like he is. He's so good. And then the Starks kid, again, I said a corner, like yeesh, man. Oh God. The interception he made was just crazy. Just crazy stuff. Yeah. And I mean, the first throw, the interception that he had down the sideline, it wasn't even a terrible throw. I mean, like it was a questionable decision, but it wasn't a terrible throw. That kid made that interception. It was just like, man, what are we doing, man? Like that is insane. Just nuts. Absolutely nuts. Georgia, once again, after losing 3 linebackers, after losing the first overall pick, after losing 2 other defensive linemen that went in the first round, after losing a safety that went in the first round, after losing a cornerback that got drafted to the NFL and Darian Kendrick, they are still very good. So, and yes, I would like to say this.
Say that. Lad McConkey, man.
Lad McConkey? He's all right, man. He's a good player.
Shout out to him putting on a show Saturday. Absolutely.
Yeah, man. Like, in a wide receiver group, the Mitchell kid's really talented. Like there's some guys in that wide receiver unit. Lad McConkey is a good football player, man. Yeah. Like he's a good football player. So they have reloaded. They're good. And the last point, and me and Brian talked about this, and we were on the opposite end of the fence on this one, Shaun. But Bo Nix continues to be Bo Nix, man. He stinks. I don't care what anybody tells me. I'm sorry. I know that's really mean. Whatever. Kid's bad, man. It's just not. It's not good. He's not good. He's got a strong arm. He's a good athlete, but he's not a good quarterback. Like that's just all it comes down to, man. Like he doesn't know what he's doing. The first interception again, I'll give him a pass on that one. The second interception though, where he didn't even read underneath coverage, I'm like, dude, you're just not good. You're just not good.
And coaches continue to have faith in him. I don't know why. his father must have some great connections. Patrick must have some great connections because there's no way you watched him at Auburn and felt like, you know what, that's the kid that's going to get us over the hump, right? And I think Brown was a better quarterback. I would have been comfortable having a Ryan. I don't know how you won the quarterback competition. I don't. I just don't. There's no way.
I'll tell you how he won the quarterback competition, Shaun, is when he was making the transfer, there was probably a promise that was made, if we're being completely honest with you. Because I mean, I'm not trying to rip Bo Nix too much, man, but I don't understand why you don't just give Ty Thompson the job. He's younger, like see what he got type of thing. Like, what Bo Nix is at this point. You just know what he is. And
you're at the beginning in the genesis of your program if you're landing. Just do it. Make the move. Make the move.
Yeah, man. It wasn't great. Don't want to spend too much time on that praising Georgia because we know that they're a very good football team. Also, Clemson's playing tonight against Georgia Tech. The game starts at 8:00. It'll be on ESPN if anybody wants to check that game out. Shaun, I guess we should talk about North Carolina in that crazy affair against Appalachian State, man. What the? All right, so final score: North Carolina wins 63-61. I'll tell you this: the quarterback's good for North Carolina. I like him; he's a good football player. But they gave up. Shaun, you know how many points North Carolina gave up in the fourth quarter? Did you hear this?
Yes. Yeah, we kind of talked about it, on the post-game show. It was crazy.
They gave up 40 points in the fourth quarter. I thought Jay Bateman wasn't the defensive coordinator anymore for North Carolina, man. But apparently they're still making a little bit of a transition here right now.
Yeah.
That was, just generally speaking, though, Shaun, that's one of those games that is like hilarious, but also why you love college football, because like stuff like that happens, where you're just like that. They really just gave up 40 points in the fourth quarter to make this a football game. They still won, but it's like 63-61 against App State. Like, who would have ever predicted that to happen, man? Like, that was a bizarre and fun football game. It was fun, but it was bizarre.
App State should have won.
Should have.
The 2-point play they ran was beautiful. Yes. Absolutely beautiful. And shout out to Chase Bryce.
Chase Bryce, yeah.
He's played really well for App State. Clemson transferred to Duke. We saw him face Notre Dame when he's quarterback at Duke. He looked pretty decent. And now he gets to App State. Played a really good game against North Carolina. The May kid, you said you liked him last week. He continues to impress.
He's got a strong arm, talented thrower, Drake May. Yep.
See why he won the quarterback competition? But that defense. Whew. That North Carolina defense might be worse than it was last year. And that's saying a lot. And I know it's early, and I know they're really young in the front seven. But from what we've seen the first 2 weeks, I don't feel, I know Notre Dame fans are asking about the team. Look, the month of September with Cal, Marshall, and North Carolina, there is no excuse for Tommy Rees and his offense not to put up 40 points every game. No excuse. Not with the defenses that are coming in. It's absolutely no excuse not to average 40 points. It won't mean anything. It won't mean a darn thing. But there's no reason why this Notre Dame offense shouldn't put up 40 points a game in the next 3 weeks. Like, that should be written in stone. We're scoring 40. How much are we going to give up defensively? And that's going to be the final score. Like, take it to the bank. That's the way we should feel. Whether or not it happens that way, because there's a lot to do from an execution standpoint for this team, offensively moving forward. But my man, the defensive call on the last App State drive, I don't know who was worse. Florida State having Jaden Daniels pinned at the 4-yard line with over a minute left, and the way they play defense, or App State getting the ball with about 32 seconds left and driving. I don't know what was worse, that Florida State defense or the North Carolina defense. It probably is the North Carolina defense because that was way too easy. That was like a prevent defense.
Was it, Shaun? That that last touchdown by App State, like I'm pretty sure wasn't that just like an inside post? Like
That's
what
all it
was that,
was.
man? It was all it was, right?
And
I
it
was just like,
wasn't like
okay.
a great route. It
No.
was just kind of like, I'm gonna be here. And then what were the safeties doing?
I don't know, man. I
If
don't
you had
know.
time to see the ball and break on the ball, you're playing deep to prevent that play.
Yeah. Shaun, I watched that game. I watched the end of that game, and I was just like, I as a defensive guy, I had no idea what was happening in my life. Like, I was just like, dude, this is just bad football. I mean, like defensively, bad football. There's some good offense mixed in on both sides because that's why they scored all those points. But I'll tell you this: App State's gonna be a tough little team. They're in this. Are they Sun Belt? They're Sun Belt, right? I think if I remember correctly. So they're gonna be a tough team, man. I mean, Chase Bryce played a pretty good football game for the most part.
He did.
Cameron Peoples and Nathaniel Noel at running back are good football players. Their defense has some guys too, even though I mean North Carolina is just a different caliber, right, comparative to their defense. But they're gonna be a tough little out in their conference, man. So keep an eye on them. Shaun, I think I'm going to feel bad right now. Brian mentioned this one already, so we're not going to spend too much time on it. But, man, I felt bad for Phil Dracovic, and I felt bad for Zay Flowers, and I felt bad for George Takis, man. I did. Look, I'm a New Jersey guy, so it was, like, cool to see Rutgers pull out this come-from-behind victory against Boston College, but Rutgers is not a very good football team.
No.
They're not. They're just not. I mean, they just lost a couple NFL players from their offense last year, and they were able to beat Boston College 22-21. Phil had his moments, man. 283 yards passing, 3 touchdowns. He threw a couple interceptions, but he had some really nice moments. Zay Flowers is a baller, man. 10 catches, $117, 2 touchdowns. His one touchdown, like a back shoulder, had to kind of like change his body positioning, and he's a really, really good football player. That offensive line, Shaun, is a problem, man. It's a problem. And I know we knew it was going to be a problem, right? Because they lost 4 starting offensive linemen. And then they had Christian Mahogany coming back, who's a good guard. And then Christian Mahogany also got hurt before the season too. So they are down to the 5 new offensive linemen. And maybe it'll get better, Shaun, but like it was bad, man. It was really bad. I mean, it was just no time for Phil. And it could have picked them apart all day. And there was just some moments of lapse as far as, and they weren't able to run the football. Garwo was not able to get it going on the ground. Boston College's offensive line is a problem. And we're talking about this game specifically because this is pertinent to Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame will be seeing Boston College at this point. And right now, you got to feel good right now about the matchup against their offensive line, but obviously things could change down the line.
Totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Look, I think Phil had a couple of throws in that first interception. It was like, Phil, come on, man. Like,
come on, Phil.
You can't. Come on, Phil. But this is, I don't like seeing, I think Deshaun Watson, he wins the championship. No, he loses in the championship. He comes back the next year. He wins the championship. But he had to do so much because the offensive line wasn't as good. And he was getting hit a lot. And he was throwing the ball a lot. He had a game that year, I think he had like 75 attempts. That's insane. Who throws the ball 75 times? And I think he had 5 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. And people are really like, oh, those 2 interceptions, you got to take care of the ball. Like, he threw the ball 75 times. Like,
right.
And the effect that the offensive line had on him in that season, I worry about Phil Jacobic's overall development being impacted, right? Like, Phil might not be on the same level as C.J. Stroud or Bryce Young, but Phil can be an NFL quarterback. Yeah. He can be an NFL quarterback.
He's talented enough.
I just don't want him his development to be stunted because the offensive line is really that bad to where we see him forcing balls all year, trying to do too much, throwing off his back leg because he's not getting protection and he's having to rush in his reads and that type of stuff. I just hope it doesn't hinder, his next step as he matriculates to the NFL.
Yeah, it's let's hope, man. I mean, just for the sake of the kid, like, not great, not great.
Yeah.
A couple other ACC games that are pertinent to Notre Dame. Syracuse beat Louisville 31-7. Louisville's bad, man. They're bad. But Syracuse looked pretty good. Garrett Shader actually threw the ball pretty well in that football game, 237 yards, 2 touchdowns. Shaun Tucker's a good football player at running back. You also get to see a little bit of Duke, Shaun, where even though Notre Dame is not playing Duke, I wanted to bring this one up because Mike Elko got a win in his first game, 30-0 over Temple, and Temple's also very bad, by the way. But they had Shaun, I don't know if you watched this game at all, but I watched it a little bit. The quarterback for Duke's all right, man. This Riley Leonard kid. I didn't know anything about him, but 328 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, also ran for 64 yards. Pretty talented kid. But yeah, just kind of wanted to mention those couple quick because, again, Notre Dame will see a couple of these football teams, obviously with the heavy ACC influence in the schedule. Mm-hmm. Did you see NC State almost get upset by East Carolina?
I'm waiting for you to talk to me. I'm waiting for you to talk to me because I tried to tell. I know you guys are high on Devin Leary, so that's not the problem. I never had a question about Devin Leary. That was never my question. It was just everything around him and the head coach.
Not a Dorn fan?
Oh, no. He almost gave the game away.
He did almost give the game away.
He almost gave the game away. And shout out to them to be tough enough to come up with the victory. The schedule has been favorable for them. And they should be a 10-win team this year.
Mm-hmm.
They should be a 10-win team this year. I was just worried about Devin Leary having to do too much.
Yeah.
And having youngsters around them and seeing how they would develop. And, if they can go unscathed up until the point where the young players around him get more comfortable and can be a better support, then I think NC State can make a run, kind of like Pittsburgh did last year. And shout out, that was a great game. Now, you want to talk about a great game, that backyard brawl.
Oh,
Friday night.
I would just like to say, Shaun, before I think on our mailbag, the preview show that we did on Friday last week, pretty sure I was the only one in the predictions that. Well, actually, you may have picked. Did you pick Pittsburgh in that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so we picked Pittsburgh. Brian and Vince both picked West Virginia. Yeah. Come on, man. Let's be serious here. But yes, it was a really good football game, man. I mean, JT Daniels was up and down a little bit. Keaton Slovis was up and down a little bit, but Slovis I thought looked pretty good when it mattered most. And yeah, I mean, it was a good football game. One game that was not a good football game. Speaking of Notre Dame opponents, USC had a really tough game first week of the season. Shaun, they had to play Rice. Man, it was a really tough football game. 66-14. Man. USC took them down. Caleb Williams was 19 of 22 for 249 yards and 2 touchdowns. So USC, man, they're the real deal, man. Big first game against Rice, man. Really tough football game. So we'll see. But either way, that's working through a few of the games. Any other games, Shaun, that you want to mention before we hop off here? Was there any of the ones that you caught or that you feel like we should mention here?
Oh, I have to. You were right. You were right.
Okay.
Look, man. The referees took the game from Illinois. That was a touchdown. I'll leave it at that.
Uh-huh.
But at some point, enough is enough. And I know the DNA and identity of that Illinois defense, which was good once again, was really good once again. Your guy, Witherspoon, was good once again.
Dude, that hit he had, man. Oh! If you don't know what I'm talking about, go on Twitter, just search Devin Witherspoon, Devon Witherspoon. He rocked this dude on a screen. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Shaun.
But that darn Tommy DeVito, man, is going to be the death of me this year. Just simple plays. Just make the simple plays. Just make the simple throws. You don't have to be spectacular. Just make the simple plays. The game should have never been that close. It should have never been that close.
Yeah.
The defense had them shut down. Anytime you give a team at home a chance to win the game with a drive at the end of the game, you're putting yourself in danger. And all the effort that the Illinois defense made to be dominant once again goes out of the window. It's just, man, look. Yeah. It was a great weekend of college football, though. It really was.
It was.
By the way, Bryce Young.
Yeah.
He's
a good player, man. Good player.
He's pretty good player.
After the concerns over how much he can run the football, he ran for 100 yards and 5 carries or whatever it was. Yeah. So, someone just mentioned Kirk Ferentz, so I want to mention this one. Did you see Kirk Ferentz? Sean, did you see the Iowa game? Did you see it?
Look,
by any
man,
chance?
I've been arguing with Big Ten fans all week.
Yeah.
When they're trying to tell me how great the Big Ten conference is. Like, dude, the Big Ten West is a joke.
Yeah, man. No, I mean, the Big Ten in general, after Ohio State's a really good football team. They can contend for a national championship, I think. Michigan's a good football team. After that, I don't know, man. I'm not sure. Who's the third best team? I don't know.
What else? Well, the best 3 teams the top 4 teams might all be in the Big Ten East.
Mm-hmm.
It might be Penn State and Michigan State after the top 2. Literally.
It's just Penn State's not very good. Penn State does not do anything for me, man. They do not move me.
No.
I put up Blaine's on here because if you did not watch the Iowa 7-3 win over South Dakota State, which, by the way, South Dakota State's got some boys, if we're being completely honest, man. I really enjoyed Garrett Greenfield's a good player at left tackle, the Yankee twins at wide receiver. Tucker Kraft got hurt during the game, but he's one of the best tight ends in all of college football, regardless of level. But Iowa won 7-3. And that 7 was not due to a touchdown. Like Blaine says here, they had a field goal and 2 safeties in that game. Jack Campbell's a dude for Iowa, though, the linebacker. He's a very good football player. But yeah, man, that was tough to watch, man. And again, I'm a defensive guy, but I watched that, man. I'm like, this is painful. This is painful for me to watch. I'm not sure I like this. I'm not sure I like it. I really didn't like it that much. It was just,
man.
Oh, man.
I sat there and shook my head and said, you know what? Illinois might not be that far from the top of the Big Ten West. Brett Bielema might not be that far away.
Hey, man, if Illinois wins off of playing defense and running the football, they may have a shot. You're not wrong. Chase Brown's a baller, and you got some guys on defense, man. You got some guys. There's some guys. The Barnes kid's pretty good. Sidney Brown, the safety's a good football player. And Devin Witherspoon, I think, is a baller. Yeah. So, you got some guys, man. There's guys.
And I understand. Sometimes we question why kids enter the transfer portal. Mm-hmm. After watching what Charlie Jones was able to do for Purdue in week 1.
Oh, man.
Charlie,
yeah.
I understand why you left Iowa. I get it.
Sean, he had 21 career catches for the Hawkeyes, and he had 10 or 11 in the first game with Purdue. Oh, man, I don't want to kill the kid too much because I actually know his quarterback coach, a really good friend of mine, actually. But the quarterback for Iowa is not it, man. He's just not it. He's not. I'm sorry. He's just not a very good Spencer Petras. He's just not a very good player.
Man. And like you say, you keep waiting.
Yeah.
To turn the corner. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh man. Speaking of turning the corner, what did you think about Sean Clifford?
I don't start with me as Sean Clifford. He's been banned for 4 years. What do you want me to say? But hey, he played his best football when it mattered most on Saturday, right? So cool. But also 98% of him is not good. We're being completely honest, man. Like, I would love to see Penn State with a good quarterback because I think they have. Our offensive line, I think, is pretty good. Parker Washington's a good football player. The tight end Bretton Strange had a really nice catch. Broke a couple tackles. He's a good football player. They have some guys, man. Nicholas Singleton, freshman running back. I mean, they have some guys. They do, but just Sean Clifford is not a great quarterback. He's just not. He's a good, solid college quarterback, but he doesn't elevate anybody. He's just as good as the surroundings. But Penn State, I think, has just been a very inconsistent team, Sean, because I think there's talent. I do think there's talent. Defensively, there's always talent at Penn State. It always is, and there still is. But they didn't look that great in that game defensively, if I'm being completely honest. Like Purdue threw the ball around the yard a little bit on them. They did. So, yeah. I know someone just said Drew Aller is pretty good. I think it was Michael that just said that. Michael, I think Drew Aller is going to be very good down the line, but I mean, even in that game, man, like he missed a couple wild throws, right? He needs time, I think. I think he's going to be good. I I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, you just play Drew Aller over Sean Clifford. I don't know if I agree with that right now. I don't, just because Sean Clifford
Sean Clifford is probably entrenched as a leader.
Yes.
You
He's
know,
a 6-year guy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's not so easy. I agree with you there, Double R. You just don't take someone that's the leader of your program that guys look up to and just take a freshman and say, here, fill those shoes. Even though he might be a better thrower of the ball and a better overall quarterback.
Yeah.
No. Look.
More talented for sure. There's
absolutely.
No doubt. I mean, he threw one ball, Shaun. I'm just like, yep, that's an NFL arm. Like, what do you want me to say about it, man? Like, that kid has NFL level arm strength right now, like plus arm strength in the NFL. Yeah. But he's a true freshman, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, and there was a reason that he was a late riser in the recruiting process. Mm-hmm. Like, he's got some warts from an accuracy perspective. Like, he does. I mean, I think he'll be good though. But right now, I would not bench Clifford for him right now. No. I think that Aller is definitely the future. And I mean, he's the backup, so he might not be able to redshirt him this year, but like, he's probably not a 5-year player anyway, if we're being honest. Like, he's not. He's going to be a 3 to 4 year player, probably an NFL type of kid, most likely. But right now, I don't know if you want to push him into, because you just won a football game, right? I think you're going to win some football games. So I think if you were going to make a switch, this was a before the season switch and just roll with Aller. But the fact that Sean Clifford's a 6-year guy, entrenched, won some football games, I think you just stick with Drew Aller. So, Shaun, that's going to end this conversation about a little bit around the horn of college football, but we're not done. We're going to give you guys a mailbag as well. So make sure, before we do transition to the mailbag, subscribe to this podcast, hit that notification bell, because there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up. We're going to start breaking down Marshall tomorrow on the show. So make sure that you get everything locked here on irishbreakdown.com. So 5-star reviews, if you're listening on the podcast platform, would also be incredibly appreciated. So start sending in your questions in the chat. I've starred 20 already, so we got a ton of questions to this point, and we're going to move over to the mailbag. All right, Shaun, let's get started on the mailbag. A good way to start, I think. Well, all right, so I'm going to pull up one that we already hit on earlier in the show, Steven. If you didn't listen to our first portion, someone else asked about Peyton Bowen, or actually, it was Steven one that asked about Peyton Bowen. I can't remember. Was it Steven?
I think so.
Okay, all right. Well, if anybody is just hopping in then and wanted to know the status of Peyton Bowen, we think Peyton Bowen's solid at this point. We'll see what happens, but we do think that the performance the defense just had is a good sign for that recruitment. We know that he is active with the other recruits in the 2023 class still, so that is a positive sign, obviously. And I think seeing Kyle Hamilton to Brandon Joseph and kind of how they developed safeties at Notre Dame, I think is going to help them. So that's just a quick recap of what we saw, what we believe is kind of the standing with Peyton Bowen. So, Shaun, another recruiting question. It does have to be recruiting questions, just so you all know. But if you want to throw in the recruiting questions, of course, we are the recruiting guys. So we would absolutely have no problem answering some of these questions. So we had Bass and Domer. Shaun said Jeremiah Love is supposed to be in attendance at the Marshall game. Correct. So, yes, last time I talked to Jeremiah and his family, the plan is to be in attendance for the Marshall game. We've talked a lot about this on the board and on the show as well. So his mom has not had a chance to meet the staff at Notre Dame. He's not had that chance because the first time she couldn't get off of work when he took an unofficial visit up to Notre Dame, he went with his dad. Second time, his mom was recovering from COVID, so was not able to come on the official visit. So the plan as of right now is that this is kind of the last piece of this recruitment, I believe. Jeremiah and his family is hoping to get up to South Bend for the Marshall game this Saturday. And if it goes well and he is able to make the trip, then I wouldn't anticipate this one going much longer. But again, got to close the deal. But as of right now, yes, he is scheduled to be in attendance for the Marshall game. And obviously, Shaun, he is a big player for Notre Dame right now. Top offensive player left on the board for them. The running back out of Christian Brothers in another St. Louis guy, man. You can talk about St. Louis guys. There's another one in Jeremiah Love. So
absolutely. And like you've been talking about, big time game changer, Christian Brothers, St. Louis pipeline. They continue. And I want to tell everybody, look, if they get this kid, it just bodes well for the 24 kids coming out of St. Louis. They're watching.
Yes.
Ryan Wingo,
Yep.
all the other kids, 24, 25, they're taking notice, and that's why this is why the Keon Keeley recruitment stung, because you wanted to start getting big time players out of the South and establish a pipeline. They established a pipeline in Texas. They've done a good job doing that. They already had one coming from California. Now they have one coming from St. Louis. They've done a good job establishing somewhat of a pipeline for the state of Michigan over the last 2 years. And so Florida was one of those other pipelines you were looking to establish. Now you have to dig in and do a little bit more work. But, Notre Dame, being a school that doesn't have a true recruiting home base in the state of Indiana, or a fertile home base, shall I say, because there's still some really good kids that, Tay and Miles from the state of Indiana. But, moving forward, you have to get guys like this to continue to build the pipelines that are ultimately going to lead to South Bend and make us a championship program. So, yeah,
100%.
big day and big time to have them on campus for that weekend.
No doubt about that. Shaun, we had one that was directed for you. So we just talked a little bit about the Illini, the Fighting Illini of Illinois. So Irish Chi-Town asks, Shaun, how do you think the Illini are going to do this season? So Shaun, do you have a season prediction for them? Like, how do you think the season is going to kind of finish out for Illinois?
Baseline, I think they're a 500 team, one game over 500 type team. What's that? About 7 wins. I think they can get to 7 wins, and they can have for them at this point in the development of that program, if they can sneak out, if they can have a win, like going up to Penn State and winning on the road and not have bad – the game Friday is a bad loss to me. They're a better team than Indiana. That's a bad loss. You control that game for 58 minutes. Should have been up more points. That's a bad loss in my opinion. But that's the type of loss you get when you're trying to build your program. It's like, we might not be able to walk into the horseshoe and win, but we can't lose this game. And I don't think they're to that point yet. So that's why I say 7 to 8 wins would be a respectable season and an improvement, in my opinion.
I think they should just move Isaiah Williams back to quarterback. I think that's what they should do.
Oh,
I know he started as a quarterback.
I mean, who else are they going to go to? Sikowski?
Oh, Artur Sikowski, man, former Rutgers great. Artur Sikowski.
He's the backup. It's like, no.
Yeah. And they need to get someone in the pipeline there, quarterback wise, man. It's not. We talked about this before, but they haven't had a real. I mean, I would consider Juice Williams a good college quarterback, but they really haven't had somebody since him. It's just it's not been great. Not been great.
Yeah, I know there are a couple of Catholic school kids, sophomore and juniors, that are pretty good quarterbacks in the Chicagoland area, and hopefully they can land one of those guys. There is no J.J. McCarthy type on the radar, but there are some solid guys that I think if they get those guys, they'll be okay.
I wanted to answer this one from Salty Virginia Peanuts. He just asked, can I buy some IB gear but have it sent to Archer and Ladarius? Salty, you can buy as much gear as you would like, sir. All
Absolutely.
Right. Go to irishbreakdown.com, go to the merchandise store, send it all over, man. You need to message Archer and Ladarius separately though to get their sizes and their addresses and all that good stuff. But man, you can do whatever you want. This is a free country, sir. And we will not push away your business. So if you want to do that, please feel free, but appreciate it. This one looks like, Shaun, let's answer this one, right? So it's from Milton Fan 15. Question: Armel Mukum, who is the defensive end that is committed to Notre Dame, that was just committed out of the state of Virginia. I know he's a high ceiling, low floor guy, but what's your your gut say? So, Shaun, have you seen much of Armel at this point?
I have. Immediately, I saw the question and I started thinking about Ogundeji, just as far as the makeup, long arms, development type guy, but I think he's a little bit more explosive than Adi was coming out of high school.
Yeah, I think he's considerably more explosive than Adi, but like the length
Yeah.
perspective, I could see that. I could see that body type, man. I think he's going to be bigger than Adi though, too, man. Like I think he's a legit 250 something right now, and I think he could be 270. Like he's a power plug, man. Like Milton fan. I honestly think that Armel Mukum's going to surprise some people at the next level. I do. I think you have to be patient with him, but if we're talking a long-term outlook, I think he could be a good player. I do, man. He's explosive. He's 6'4", 250 plus pounds right now, long arms, and he is physical. He's a really physical player. So I wouldn't even put out a question, Shaun. I know they're looking at him as a strong side defensive end, but I wouldn't be crazy to think that maybe he's a 3 technique down the line either, man. Because like he's just a big kid, man. Like I think he's going to be pretty big. So I like Armel Mukum.
I'm going to step out on a limb, Ryan. And I'm going to say this offseason, Notre Dame's going to get an impact player on the interior. Do you
think so?
I think they're going to get a transfer. I think they're going to get a transfer.
Oh,
impact player on the defensive line. I really do, because I'm looking at what possibly is coming out, still having the young guys like Onye and Ford in there, and then the recruiting class coming in. I think they're going to go out and find an impact player to come in right there and kind of just solidify things until they get the Justin Scotts and those type of guys coming in 24. I really do. I think that's one of the spots. We can talk about Howard Cross, Jacob Lacey, all we want to. Like, the effort they give, they're going to look much better against Marshall.
Yes.
And they're going to flash much more against Marshall and Cal and North Carolina than they did against Ohio State. And shout out to that left guard, the 5-star offensive guard that made his first start for Ohio State.
Donovan Jackson.
He's going to be pretty good. He's going to be pretty good, bro. He's going to be pretty good. You question him being a youngster, but it's like, okay, they have a good one. And that is, the next step in the evolution of Notre Dame's defense is just getting studs on the interior. I'm talking about studs with size to them. Like just coming in at 310. Like Justin Scott is hitting campus at 310. Like, we're not trying to put weight on him. We're not trying to find out how much weight he can put on and still play fast. No, he's fast and quick at 310. Let's go. So that's the type of guy that Notre Dame needs next.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need to start adding some size. I mean, like Howard Cross had that sack that was really nice, and he's a good football player. But, I mean, there's just some limitations there. There is. I mean, he's listed at 276 pounds. I'm here to tell you, it's just my opinion. There's no way he's 276 pounds, in my opinion. But he's done really well for what he is at Notre Dame. He's an undersized interior defensive lineman that plays incredibly hard, and in New Jersey great as well, Shaun. So we always got to shout out the New Jersey greats, man. So yes, but interested to see. We had this one. Jay Henry asked any news on Jade Love. Jay, we just kind of started out the segment obviously with this, but again, we think he's going to visit for the Marshall game most likely. And then I think we'll get a verdict on that one pretty soon afterwards. So just to reiterate that real quick, we'll stick here because we were just talking about Mukum, who's a strong side defensive end in the 2023 class. We have Michael who said, will Notre Dame get a true edge rush end viper in the 2023 class? Shaun, I've been pretty consistent on this. My answer is yes, I do. I don't know who it is going to be. And I think that this evaluation period that's happening in September right now, as far as the high school players, is going to be a big step for that. But I mean, we're seeing the board expanding pretty recently over the last few weeks. I think that they are eventually going to get a viper in this class, a true long explosive type of end, not a strong side defensive end. I just personally don't know who it is right now. I don't think the staff 100% knows who it is right now either, if I'm being quite honest.
And look, they have 3 big time college football playoff meaningful games on their schedule. They just played one. The Clemson game will be another one. And if USC holds up their end of the bargain, because we expect Notre Dame to hold up their end, that will be the third one. So when you have 3 big games like that, it is a showcase to not only the 24 kids, but to the 23 kids that are unsigned and getting ready to make a commitment in December. When you hit November with those 2 big games, That's a huge stage for recruiting. Like, yo, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the opportunity to get a Samuel Mpemba on board, to get some other guys on board and make an impact. So, like you said, I agree. They will get someone, but, evaluation period and everything, we'll start to learn more about the guys we start seeing coming to games and getting on campus, who they're targeting, and then we'll move forward.
So Bill Walsh asked a question, read that Nicholas Harbor had a tough game this weekend. Any chance to get and play with him? Bill, no, I don't think so. I mean, look, they Notre Dame offered him pretty early. Notre Dame took their shot with him pretty early. I just don't think there's much interest from Nicholas Harbor's perspective. So it's just, not interest in there right now. And I think that we're in a stage where it's going to be tough to try to generate interest, and Notre Dame's not on him right now either, if we're being honest. Like, they're not calling him. Like, it's just, that ship has sailed at this point. So that ship sailed several months ago, for being completely honest. So, Shaun, we had a question directed at you from Antoine. Antoine said, Shaun D., what are your thoughts on the Bears moving out of Chicago as far as them not playing games in Chicago? Is this a thing?
Oh, yeah. The Bears are revealing this week on Wednesday, they'll be revealing their new stadium to be built in Arlington Heights. So, yeah, it's a done deal. There's clamoring from fans to get a second team in Chicago to play at Soldier Field. The Cowboys don't play in Dallas. The Rams don't play in Los Angeles. They play in Inglewood. The Giants and the Jets don't play in New York. I mean, like, who cares where they play? Like, this is historical. Like, oh, man, you got to play on the lake and the snow and the monsters of the Midway. And what has it gotten you? Nothing. Yeah. It's time for the Bears to have better facilities. And what they're going to reveal, because I have gotten some information, what they're going to reveal is literally going to be their own. It's almost going to be their own town or municipality. Like the Arlington Heights horse track, which was a nationally known horse track, had been shut down for about a year and a half. They bought the property, which is massive. So literally, you're talking about a retractable dome, from what we're hearing. You're talking about hotels and restaurants surrounding that are theirs, right? It's their own village, it's their hotels, it's their restaurants, along with investors, parking lots right next to the metro station that runs from the city. Like, this is going to be a financial bonanza for this ownership and the Bears. Now, this is the key. Ted Phillips, longtime president, who pretty much has run the financial side of Chicago Bears. Fans lament over his decisions to be involved with players and how that's gone. He's retiring. He's announced that, look, this is his legacy. I've brokered this deal. I've got the new stadium. This is my legacy. He's getting ready to walk away from the day-to-day. And his new stadium and the financial bonanza that it brings is going to be what he's known for. Now, I start to think that the clock is ticking for the Hallis family to sell. Because now your value is about to go through the roof. You have your own stadium. You're able to attract the Super Bowl now. And you have all of these businesses surrounding this, and you're your own little town, your own little Bears town municipality. I think the clock is ticking now. We're going to see the Bears, the Hallis and the McCaskies, really contemplate selling the team probably in the next 5 years. So, yeah, it is.
That would be monumental, man. That's crazy.
Things are changing, but what better time to sell than now? Like,
true,
you don't sell when you don't have your own stadium, right? No one,
and there's going to be a lot of bidders too, with excitement over that move too, right? So, like, I mean, there'd be a big demand in that market right now.
Like, no one would seriously buy that team when they don't have their own stadium and they have to deal with a ridiculous lease with the city of Chicago,
right?
In the Park District. Like, that's not attractive. Now, It's an attractive sale. So that's really what's going on. And it doesn't matter. Like if Bears fans are stuck on having games played in Chicago, look, it's 2022 in the NFL. Look around. Half the league doesn't play in the city.
That's true.
That they're named for. It's just move on from that, man.
A lot of them don't, man. You're right. I never I know that, but like I've never like truly like sat down and like thought about how many don't play in the city that they're named. You know, it's crazy. Well, we had someone that wanted to follow up on this, Shaun. Matt McCarthy says, "Does the staff Oh, I'm sorry. Whoops, that wasn't the one. That has nothing to do with this conversation. Here we go. It's from Irish Chi-Town. What do you think the city should do with Soldier Fields?
Burn it."
That's it. That's all you got.
Ryan, look, I wouldn't want my son's high school team to play on that field.
It's that bad. It's that bad.
Horrible. And when you have a city that is unwilling to invest in a professional field for its professional team that makes the stadium even, no one's going to care about Soldier Field now. It's just a nice piece of history to look at as you drive down historical Lakeshore Drive. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's all it is now. It's empty.
Yeah.
And there's really nothing.
It's just like a historical landmark that's kind of gone past its use.
It's legally designated as part of the Chicago Park District, right?
Yeah.
So they're not about to destroy it.
Right.
I don't think. Or maybe it gets sold and maybe it becomes part of Tiger Woods' new golf course that's going up. Who knows? But yeah, for me, you can burn it. Just burn it. Get rid of it.
Shaun, you know what that reminds me of? Now we're talking so much about Chicago. I will be in Chicago in 4 days, sir. 4 days till I'm in Chicago. And I might go to Wrigley that day. I don't know if I told you that, but the Cubs play that day. So I might
you can burn that too. You can burn that too.
Well, I've never seen Wrigley, man. So I got to see Wrigley
seriously,
before you burn
it. You're going to have a great time. You're going to have an absolute amazing time. And this is the great thing about Wrigley Field. The Cubs stink.
Yes.
And you're still going to have a great time when you go to the ballpark.
Well, I found third baseline seats for like $30-something, man. I'm like,
give
me that. Give me that.
Yeah.
Hey, man. It's like when we went up to Boston a few years ago, we just toured Fenway, you know, like Wrigley's one of those places you just got to see, you know, it's like Yankee Stadium.
I agree.
The old Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. Well, you're going to have a great time. All jokes aside, you're going to have a great time.
Nah, man, I'm looking forward to that. So the one that I did hit earlier, I believe, and let me just make sure I didn't skip. Yes. So Matt McCarthy asked, and I just want to make sure I didn't miss this one for Matt because it's the one I accidentally pulled up a minute ago before as we were still talking about Chicago. So Matt says, does the staff view Peter Jones as a tackle or guard? Is it the latter? Could they be a holdup on why they haven't offered Ian Moore? So Peter Jones, offensive tackle in the 2024 class out of Malvern Prep in Pennsylvania. I believe, Matt, and I haven't talked to the staff about this, but I think that they view him as an offensive tackle that could also play guard. So I think the plan is to start him out at offensive tackle. I think the hang up with Ian Moore, who's out of New Palestine, is I think how you pronounce it, out of Indiana. Mm-hmm. So he is a top 150 graded player by a couple different platforms. He plays offensive tackle in high school, but he is definitely a guard at the next level. There's no doubt. Like, I think Peter Jones has a chance to play offensive tackle, but could also be a very good guard. I think Ian Moore is going to be a good guard on the college football level. I think the hang up for me, Matt, is that Notre Dame wants to make sure that they get true offensive tackle types, for one.
Yeah.
They don't have a lot of spots, 2. And 3, I think they just still want to do their research on Ian Moore, if I'm being honest. Like, I think they like some parts about him, and he's been on campus already, and there's a big interest in Ian. Ian Moore has big interest in Notre Dame. So I think that if Notre Dame chooses to offer him and he has a take, that Ian Moore would be in this class pretty quickly, if I'm being completely honest with everybody, right? But I think that the staff is still figuring out exactly what they want the offensive line board to look like, right? Because they've only offered 4 players. Those 2, Kyle Altuner and Gerby Lambert out of Massachusetts. So I think they're still doing their due diligence on the evaluation part of the 2024 class. So I don't think they're going to force the issue. I think there's only going to be about 2 to 3 offensive linemen in the 2023 class, most likely probably 2024, excuse me. And I think they're trying to wait and see a little bit on Ian Moore right now. So, but we'll see. I think Ian Moore is a good player, though. If I'm Notre Dame, I would keep close tabs on him. So,
and Brian, I think fans are going to have to get used to the transition of recruiting at Notre Dame and how it's going to be different than probably 10 years prior, specifically on the offensive line. And Notre Dame is not about to just take guys that they normally would take. Like guys that are like, yeah, I want to come. Okay, come on. Like we're seeing guys that want to come to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is like, we're still evaluating. We're going to take our time, and that's leaning more towards the SEC model of how patient Alabama and Georgia is. In their recruitment, and not just jumping out on guys specifically that are Alabama kids or Georgia kids, unless they're just like Jalen and Bachway. It's just like, I'm ready to come, and then it's like, oh yeah, you definitely come on. So you talk about the evaluation of Ian Moore, and I talked to someone on the recruiting side nationally that said, look, Notre Dame has to realize that their program is so good that they should view or go into the process saying there are only 70 kids to 75 kids good enough to play at our school. That might sound rash or harsh, but literally that is kind of the model that Nick Saban uses. Like, look, there are really only about 50 kids that are good enough to play here. So
that's why you have a board, man. That's why you make your board.
So we're going to fully evaluate these 50 kids. We don't have to go outside of those 50 and waste our time evaluating other kids. We're locked in on these 50. Dig deep and go hard, and let's get our 20 kids or our 25 kids, and let's move on to the next year. And so, I don't know what it'd be interesting to see what you think that number is for Notre Dame, because I don't think it's probably the same as Georgia and Alabama or as low as Georgia, Alabama right now. But I do think it is below 100. It's like, okay, we have these 80 guys. That's, they always evaluate because someone might pop on film or they might find out about a kid late. But just off the top, in any particular class, there are really only, a very few amount of kids that are good enough to play football at Notre Dame if you're trying to win a national championship.
And I also think that the 2024 offensive line group in general looks a little underwhelming early. So I think that they want to see what the maturation looks like. I want to see what guys take a big step forward and do all that type of stuff. A little more context. Archer just put in that Ohio State is pushing for Ian Moore very hard. Crystal ball's already coming in for him, and a lot of talk of him joining the class soon. So, again, I think Ian's a good football player. I think he would be a good get for anybody. So, yeah, we'll see how that one kind of ends up. I want to pull up this comment because it was funny. Bill Walsh said, man, Harry Heastand looked great on the sideline. Guy looks 20 years younger, LOL. And, of course, that LOL comes in because they mistaked Matt Bayless for Harry Heastand during the game when they were talking about him, which was fantastic.
I thought that was hilarious.
Yeah, it was really funny, man. I was like, because they kept talking about Harry Heastand, Shaun, and they kept closing in on Bayless, and they just kept talking about it. I'm like, oh wow, they really think that's Harry Heastand. They really think that is. Wow, okay.
Cool. The things they were saying about him,
kind
of applied. I'm like, well, if you change the name, Matt Bayless has been that important to Notre Dame.
That's fair, man. It's very fair.
The last few years, but yeah, that's on the spotter. That's on the spotter for the camera. Like, yo, that's on the spotter. The guys upstairs, they only say we have them. We got a Harry shot. We're about to go to the Harry shot. Go ahead and talk about Heastand. So,
hey man, it was funny either way. And honestly, we're still talking about it days later. So maybe the cameraman made a good decision. I don't know, but it was funny. We're gonna go to Great questions today, by the way. We're rolling through these ones pretty quick. We won't last a ton longer because I didn't really lead off with this, but I'm not feeling that great today. So we might not have a 4-hour show, right? But Mark Avalone, Mark, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, but please put it in the chat so for next time I don't butcher it. With Notre Dame transfer portal limitations, of course, that meaning that if it is a undergraduate transfer, it is tougher to get into Notre Dame, and recruitment of higher quality players that might transfer for playing time. How can Notre Dame deal with it? Will student dean adjust their stringent rules?
No, I can answer
Yeah.
like immediately.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No. And this is why I made that prediction, right?
Mhm.
Because we are because of the COVID year.
Yeah.
We are in a different time with guys that normally would have to make a decision like, man, do I go to the NFL rather than staying at a place that I don't want to be? To now saying, well, I do have this extra COVID year, and I've been here an extra year and I've actually graduated. I'm a graduate. So now let me go ahead and go and get another year to improve myself, or go, play with a different quarterback that's going to make me look better for my NFL evaluation, a la Charlie Jones or Burton going to Alabama. You get into those situations where kids, because of the COVID year, are a little bit further along academically, and now they're making that decision rather as a graduate rather than an undergrad. And I think you're going to have some examples of that. This might be the last season of it, because I think this is it next year. That's the last group that's really going to get that COVID year.
So it would be 2020 was the COVID year. So anybody that was a freshman in 2020 or older had the COVID year. So
24 group.
So yeah, it would be the 2024 group.
Yeah.
Well, technically, so 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024 season would be the last year of the COVID extra eligibility. Yeah. So still got a couple more years, man. It's great. Shaun, because I do like the NFL draft stuff, right?
Yeah.
There is multiple 7th-year seniors out there that I've evaluated. And there is a kid for Northern Illinois. I think his last name is Pugh. I think his first name's Kyle. I could be wrong. 8th-year senior, sir. He's been at Northern Illinois for 8 years because he had double red shirt. Well, one was a medical red shirt, had a regular red shirt, and has had he may have had 2 different red shirts. I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, he's in his 8th season right now because he also got the extra year for COVID. So crazy, man. He was a 2015 kid. 2015. Yeah. He's still in college, man. Crazy stuff. But
so just look out for the coaching changes and programs that might be struggling. And you start hearing about players wanting to leave like late October, November, and you'll start seeing okay, these are guys that might be available, come off season. So it should be pretty interesting. Like the COVID year makes it crazy interesting. I know Illinois has a couple of 6-year guys, 6-7-year guys.
Yeah. Alex, the right tackle, is a 6-year guy. Yeah, they got some 6 years.
Yeah. So this COVID year has made college football very, very interesting.
It also makes Ryan Roberts very upset. I don't want to talk about myself in the third person, Shaun, but I had a couple players that I did full evaluations for last year's draft, and then they ended up going back to school for their 6th year. I'm like, come on, man. I was done. Done. It was written up. There was a grade. Everything was done, and then that happens. Come on, man. Come on. Nobody cares about me, Shaun. I can't deal with it, man. I can't deal with it. Great question, though, Mark. One thing I would add to what Shaun said, because I agree, I don't think things are going to change. I think to avoid the latter of this about transferring for playing time, right, or just transferring in general, if you win football games and you run a really good program, like I think Marcus Freeman can, then there's going to be less transfers. There's always going to be some, because like you said, there's going to be some people that are just kind of buried on the depth chart for playing time, but I don't think it's going to be a major issue at Notre Dame. I don't. And I think good programs are figuring out that you don't have to do the transfer. Did you know Clemson didn't have a single player that they took as a transfer this year, Shaun? Not a single transfer player. I saw it during a game. Yeah, they were the lowest ones. There was 2. It was funny. They were one of 4 teams of 4 colleges that did not take a transfer this offseason. The other 3 were the military schools. So, yeah, obviously that's a little bit of a different transition into transferring to an Army or a Navy, right? So, good question, though, Mark. Really appreciate it. Great question. Thought I had a super chat. Yeah, here's a super chat I wanted to make sure we got up. Christopher Morgan, thank you so much for the super chat. Christopher just got back from Columbus this morning. My next game I'm going to is Clemson in November. Will you guys have a tailgate? Definitely was awesome. Ohio State's lowest score since, I think, 2018. OSU fans took me for beers. Oh, that's nice. Glad to hear, Christopher, that they were nice, first and foremost, because I know we had some concerns over what the level of being a good host might be for that game. But it's nice to hear that you had a great time. Yeah, lowest total, I think, in 4 years or something like that Ohio State scored 21 points. Shaun, so I mean, yeah, Christopher, I believe that there is a plan to do a tailgate. I'm sure that I will probably be in attendance for that game because that is going to be Notre Dame's biggest recruiting weekend of the year by far. So I'm sure that I'm going to try to talk my wife into going with me for the weekends, bring the baby with me, hopefully too, but I'm sure that I will be in South Bend for the Clemson game. So yes, I believe there will be a tailgate. If there's not a tailgate, I'll be around if you want to hang out. So I'm sure I'll be there for the Clemson game, though. I'm sure I will.
I concur.
You'll be at Clemson's game too, Shaun? Oh, yeah. Write it down, man. Write it down. It's going to be a big game. Obviously, losing to Ohio State is not great, but it's going to be a big football game. Biggest game of the year now. Irish Chi-Town, I wanted to answer this one real quick, Shaun. Does anybody know how Shaun Stiers is doing? Of course, he was hospitalized for a heart issue. So, Irish Chi-Town, we mentioned a little briefly on the Saturday show, but Shaun Stiers is home, recuperating. Everything's good as of now. So, thank you, everybody, so much for the consistent prayers and thoughts that were thrown out to Shaun, who's obviously dealing with the heart ailment. Pacemaker was put in. I think that's public knowledge. And he is doing a lot better. So thank you all again so much. Really appreciate the continued support and prayers on that end. If you want to continue to do that, please, just keep him in your thoughts because he's doing a lot better now, but still a little bit of a road, right? So, but thank you all so much for the kind words and the prayers. We really do appreciate it. Only a few more left here, Shaun. So let's go to Rob Lobo 123. If the offense doesn't look good the next few weeks, does Freeman think about giving the play calling responsibilities to someone else? How hard is that to do in the middle of a season? Shaun, you want to start with the crack on that one?
No. No. I mean, he's just not. Look, because I don't want to cause problems. If you haven't watched the show Vince and Brian did yesterday, go watch it, right? Because you overreact emotionally to the game with the offense in the second half. And then they go and show you things and you start to say, look, one thing jumped out to me, right? Tyler Buckner isn't ready. He has a Michael Jordan mentality pre-Phil Jackson right now. Meaning that Michael Jordan trusted himself. Like, if all else fails, give me the ball. Phil Jackson got there and pretty much implemented a system that's like, yo, you're going to use and trust your other teammates. And from that system, now you start to see Scottie Pippen get much better. Let's go to the first drive. They get the big play to Styles. They get 4 yards from Estime on the next play. And then they come back and just execute poorly a run play to Logan Diggs to where they hike the ball and Lorenzo Styles is still coming in motion. I don't know. Are you supposed to be cracking on somebody? Block? I know you're not trying to block anybody on the interior of the defensive line. And the play is just like horrific. And then they go to 3rd 8 and they motion Tyree out of the backfield. So they have the screen option to him to the left, but then they have no safety in the middle of the field, one-on-one with Michael Mayer. 3 options, and Tyler Buckner option that he chose, well, I'm going to run the quarterback sneak. It was like, that's like, give me the ball. No, kid. You have 2 of your best players that can get the ball in space, man-to-man, make a man miss, and make a big play, or Michael Mayer one-on-one with a 6-foot safety, and he's 6'5". Just let him go up, catch. And it's like, we saw that again. He had the option on another play on that drive, that last drive, the second to last drive. Chris Tyree once again runs out, and he decides to, and they pointed out, the play, no, the offensive pass interference play. This goes to decision making.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Salerno comes across. He runs a wheel route that he eventually throws to. Once again, it's zero coverage. Braden Lindsey has proven he can run by their defensive backs.
Yep.
He's one-on-one on the outside to the other side with Denzel Burke, who he's beaten already. And you choose to throw the ball to Matt Salerno. Like this, these are the things where, it's like, you know what? This really isn't Tommy Rees. Like, that's what you want. That matchup is what you want. But
I didn't want to cut you off, Shaun, but you're absolutely right. I mean, that part of it is, and I was very critical of Tommy Rees. I do not think that he called a great game.
No,
I don't think. All right, that's too hyperbolic. He did not call a good game, right?
Yeah.
Like it was a bad call, poorly called game in my opinion. But that particular play, which was kind of the I mean, I know people keep talking about like that, the touchdown to the slot, for Ohio State to take the lead 14-10. But like that play for me, Shaun, was really where the nail was in the coffin, because Notre Dame was driving and then they get that stupid offensive pass interference call. And then it's 1st and 25, like that would put you in such a bad spot. But to your point, that's a Tyler Buckner decision, right? Like that was a bad decision on his part. So while Tommy Rees needs, as like you guys, like seriously, this is my fan speak for a second. You can blame Tommy Rees, right? Like you can be very critical of him right now. 100%. He didn't call a good game. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. But on that particular play that what you're talking about, that's a quarterback decision.
That's a quarterback decision,
right? Yes. And again, first career start, I think Tyler Buckner is going to be a really good player at Notre Dame. I'm not like moving off of that at all. Yeah. But that particular play was not Tommy Rees' fault. No. That was a bad decision by a quarterback.
Yeah. At a key point in the game where you have an opportunity to come down and take the lead, you're in their territory. Like your quarterback has to be able to identify. And Ryan, we're not talking about like a disguise or anything. It's like literally everybody's right here. He's man to man. Like that should have been as soon as I hit my back foot on my drop.
That's a pre-snap indicator, man. Like if I see the look and I'm just like, oh, I have one-on-one outside. Okay, cool. Let's take it. Yeah. So again, that's not Tommy's fault necessarily, right? No. I mean, there was definitely some calls where it's just way too conservative. Didn't love the play call, no doubt about it. But that play particular, that's not a Tommy Rees issue in my opinion. That's not a Tommy Rees issue.
No, and there were about 3 to 5 plays where you could say, okay, that's Tyler maybe choosing the wrong option there instead of getting the ball to the playmakers and letting things happen.
Yeah. We had someone that asked kind of like a little bit of a follow-up-ish. So a number one Notre Dame fan, is it Tommy Rees's responsibility to make adjustments with the O-line, or is that Harry Hiestand? So it's a great question. So Harry Hiestand is constantly, offensive line coaches are constantly talking to offensive linemen about like, hey, we're seeing this, you need to do this, yada, 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 kind of adjustments to what they're seeing up front type of thing. Tommy Rees is always going to work with the offensive line coach to understand. It's more about like, okay, Harry, what are we seeing up front? Like, or 3-man front, 4-man front, what techniques are we usually seeing? All that type of stuff, right? Yeah. And then that's going to adjust what the the type of run game that you're going to run, what the blocking assignments are in pass pro, like that type of thing, right? Like that's where the adjustments come for. So Tyrese isn't going up to an offensive lineman and being like, hey, you got to work your inside hand better. Like that's not his job, right? But they're working together to understand what they're seeing up front and what the issues are and how we can counteract those issues. Okay. So like that's what more of the Tommy Rees, Harry Heastham relationship looks like. Like that's definitely during a game anyway. That's what they see. All right, so we're going to go to.
That's great.
Bass and Domer, how many of these 23 wide receivers will be enrolling in this January? So to my knowledge, Jaden Greathouse is definitely going to be enrolled in January. Braylon James will definitely be enrolled in January. Rico Flores, I believe. Do not quote me on that one, though. I think he may be a January guy as well, but I know that first two are definitely enrolling early. Dylan Edwards, I believe. I haven't actually heard about Dylan Edwards, so I'm going to keep that one off the back end for a second. I do not know about Dylan Edwards. So 2 out of 4 are definites, and then I think Rico is as well, but we will see. I'll keep you guys updated on that as well. So Notre Dame has some receivers coming, man. They have some receivers coming. All right. Let us now, nearing the end. A lot of great questions, just in general. Shaun, I'm going to let you start this one. Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, said, Great House comp is Julio Jones. Ryan, agree or disagree? I knew he said Ryan, agree or disagree, but I just want you to start with this one because that is high praise. That is high praise. Yeah.
No, and that's not being disrespectful or saying anything about Jaden Greathouse. It's just no. Julio was 1 of 1. Size, speed, explosion. No, that's an apple to oranges comp. I mean, are there pieces of Jaden Greathouse that I can say, okay, he's taking that from Julio, but just as a comp, I would disagree with that.
Yeah. Now Julio is about as big as a height, weight, speed freak that we've seen at the wide receiver position. I mean, he's up there with Calvin Johnson as far as like the height, weight, speed freaks that we've seen in the last 15, 20 years, right? So, yeah.
What Super Bowl was that? What number was that when they lost to the Patriots?
Man. That was I can remember 28-3. I can't remember what the actual Super Bowl number was.
Julio, because Bill Belichick has been known for like shutting down the number one.
Yeah.
On any offense and forcing you to go to your 2 and your 3. Julio Jones did some things in that Super Bowl physically that is just like
can't teach it, man.
You can't teach that. You just can't. So I wouldn't put that on any high school kid coming out like, because that comp, he's 1 of 1. He really is. Yeah. Coming out of high school, he was 1 of 1. That's why he might be the most important. This might be a great piece of research for us, Ryan.
Okay.
The most important recruit to a program. Julio Jones might be the most important recruit for Alabama under Nick Saban. Because when he went there, and you look at the skill position players that came after him, he changed things. He changed things at Alabama and kind of transitioned them from being strictly defense to being like, okay, now we're explosive offensively as well.
It's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I think we should do a show one time, Shaun. Maybe we'll do this next week because we kind of have a little bit of a free reign for the second talking point of these shows. Maybe we'll talk about some of the top programs and what we feel like, are the most important recruits. That's an interesting topic, man. I like that. Yeah. We'll talk about that. We'll figure that out. All right. We had Mark Evalone. What impact did the Ohio State loss have on recruiting? Mark, I don't think much. I think that we make too much of like the one game impact stuff as far as recruiting wise. If it's something where Notre Dame has a bad season, then I think it could have a tremendous impact as far as the winning and the outcome of some of these football games. Like, there's no doubt. But I think if Notre Dame goes 11-1, 10-2, they beat Clemson, whatever it is, like, I think that I don't think this game is going to be like a nail in the coffin type of thing, right? I think it's more about the full season scope that is going to affect it, in my opinion. So, and honestly, you could also talk about the other side of it. It's like, Shaun, like, you don't think the defensive recruits that were in attendance were kind of impressed by Notre Dame holding that offense to 21 points? I mean, like, there's going to be part of that, right? So yeah.
It was interesting watching the Twitter feeds of some of the 24 kids in particular going into the game, because most of them were picking Notre Dame. Mm-hmm. And I was saying to myself, like, wow, like, is that kind of showing how their recruitment is going with Notre Dame, for them to pick Notre Dame going into Ohio State? And then you saw the tweets during the game and how recruits were impressed by what Notre Dame was doing. And we probably were sitting there as Notre Dame guys like, we should be up by 10. Like, oh, this isn't enough. Yeah. But the recruits, in my opinion, responded favorably to the game on Saturday night. And now we get to see, what Notre Dame puts on the field and on tape for the rest of the season and how they fare against Clemson and USC. That's ultimately going to be the telltale for how they finish this 23 class and kind of explode going into the off season for the 24 class.
Well, I'll say this, Shaun, and like, if Notre Dame goes 11-1 and they're able to go 2-1 against Clemson, USC, and Ohio State combined, right? Yeah. Like, I think you're going to be pretty happy about that at the end of the day. I understand why right now it feels the way it does. It stings, the fact that Notre Dame just lost that football game, but I don't think it's the end of the world, right? Like, you talked about it with Vince and Brian's show yesterday. Talk yourself off the ledge a little bit. Like, I don't think it has to be the end of the world, right? So yeah, we'll see. We started talking about this one a little bit, but Archer asked Shaun, I talked about Charles Jagusah maybe having an impact early on potentially. Which 2023 recruits will you see the most? We'll see the most playing time as true freshmen. So here, I'm going to work through a couple guys, and you let me know who you agree with, or if there's somebody you would throw into the fold. Okay, so I think that Jaden Greathouse will have a role as a freshman. Mm-hmm. I think there will be at least one other wide receiver that will have a role, whether that is Rico Flores or Braylon James or Dylan Edwards. I don't know. I think there's going to be at least one other wide receiver, though, that can have an impact in the initial season, 2023. Offensive line-wise, I think there's going to be some competition that could happen inside. So that's why I think, like, maybe a Charles Jagusah, maybe a Sullivan Absher, but I would lean Jagusah. So I think 2 wide receivers, an offensive lineman potentially, even though usually that's a transitional period. Defensive line-wise, I think you're talking about at least one of those defensive linemen needs to come in and play. I'm not saying that it's necessarily definitely going to have to be a Viper, definitely going to have to be a strong side defensive end, definitely going to have to be an interior, but I think one defensive lineman, so pick your poison of the Viper that's going to be coming in, or it's going to be a Brandon Vernon, or it's going to be a Bukar Traore, or Devin Houston. It doesn't matter. Either way, I think there's going to be a defensive lineman that's going to get some immediate playing time. Linebacker-wise, I think it's going to be pretty crowded, so I'm not going to pick a linebacker, although I think a Jaden Osbury could certainly play on special teams and do a great job, obviously. So, I mean, he would impact the game. And then I think Peyton Bowen on the back end is the guy for me that I think is going to come in, and he is going to play a lot of football. So those are the guys I think, Shaun. I don't know if there's anybody you disagree with, anybody you would want to throw out there, but that's just kind of what I see right now.
Yeah, I think Peyton Bowen is day one. Like,
he's the one, right? He's definitely the one.
Just put him out there. Like, let him roll. And like you said, the interior, because of the depth, and there are going to be battles on the interior of the offensive line. I really can't think. The wide receivers should come in and get plenty of opportunity to play.
2 to 3 freshman receivers, I think, will impact. Not saying starts, but will have a role. Yeah. I think. Yes.
And interesting what you pointed out. Mm-hmm. The backlog or depth chart at tight end could make Cooper Flanagan say, you know what? Let me go play on this side of the ball. Because that tight end room for the next Michael Mayer leaves, but I mean, the 2 guys they have now are pretty good. And I mean, Cooper Flanagan could come in and, be the 4th, 5th tight end. But tight end is not going to be the problem. But interior, offensive line. And see, this is the thing. What we're seeing, which goes back to the question we would ask, how did Saturday's game play into recruiting?
Right.
When recruits see the two freshmen at cornerback play, they feel like I have a chance.
Yes.
They play freshman cornerbacks, and they play well.
Yep.
And now that is going to be afforded to them.
Yeah.
I don't think that stops. I think Mike Mickens is going to do a great job of bringing in a Christian Gray and saying, you know what? Hey, you come out here and do your job. You come in January. We'll find a way to get you on the field. We'll get you in a rotation. And so they might not be starters, but they can definitely see themselves playing.
Yeah.
So,
and I didn't even mention Shaun. I mentioned Osbury maybe being like a key coverage player as far as on special teams. But I mean, you have several guys that are also, I think, going to come in and impact the return game. I mean, you talk about Micah Bell as a potential returner, Peyton Bowen as a potential returner, Dylan Edwards as a potential returner. I even think Christian Gray can do some return stuff, right? Like all those guys, and they're going to have an opportunity to come in and play. So
were you shocked? I'm like, what? You know, I was excited to see Brandon Joseph in the return game. And I'm like, what?
Just kept fair catching.
What are we doing? Like, are you being told to do this?
There was a couple where I was like, okay, that's a close one. Like a fair catch is probably a good opportunity, but then there was one or two where I'm just like, man, you probably had at least 10 yards in front of you, brother.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that Brandon Joseph is back there more for his great hands than he is for his return ability, which is unfortunate. Not unfortunate for him because he's doing what he's told to do.
Exactly.
But he's not. I don't. We'll see if it changes.
So valuable. He's so valuable defensively. It's like I don't even know why we're chancing it. But if we're going to give up yardage just to make sure that we catch the ball, it's like.
I would rather see at this point two players back there, and this is just my personal opinion. One is Lorenzo Styles. I would love to see Lorenzo Styles back there because I think he could do it. And the other one, this would probably be a surprise to you, Shaun. I would like to see Jaden Mickey back there because I think that he is a competitive kid and he's got a little wiggle to him. And I think that he would actually, and I know he's been practicing at punt return a little bit too. Yes. I think he has kind of an aggressive mentality that might be really good at punt return. Because the one thing about punt returning, comparative to kick returning, you got to be a little crazy, man. It's not an easy thing to be a punt returner, but he's another guy that I would just maybe think about. But yeah. All right, so let's go to Archer. Just had a quick comment on Jackson Smith and Jigba. Good news on the JSN front. He'll sit out the next 2 weeks and should be ready to go for Wisconsin. If y'all would have blown his knee out, I'm not sure we could have stayed friends. Well, Archer, luckily, his knee is not blown out. It was a good hit, a clean hit on Jackson, but more than anything, I am happy that he is going to be back soon. I never want to see a guy lose a season, even if it's to the team I root for. So
yeah, we talked about it. I thought ABC did a really good job of kind of, letting people know what was going on. Mm-hmm. They said it was behind the knee, not in front of the knee or inside the knee, behind the knee, hamstring. And that's what it was. And the fact that he's out 2 weeks and he'll come back in Wisconsin, you love to hear that. You absolutely love to hear that. And I'm sure they'll handle business.
And now that I know for sure that Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be fine, I just want to leave this here. Brandon Joseph is a dude, sir. Man, that was a nice shot. It was a nice shot, but I'm glad that he's healthy. Jeff Fluke said, if you could choose one Notre Dame jersey to wear, what name would it is on the back, Shaun? So I guess this is more of like a favorite player of all time type of thing, right? So you have an answer for this one?
I don't do jerseys with names on it.
Oh, okay. All right. Not your thing?
That'll be tough for me. Now, if you just ask me just flat out what Indy jersey would I wear, just, with my fandom, it would be 25 is the most. 25 is huge for me.
The number, yeah. Rocket and
25 is me. I wouldn't put Ismail or Rocket on the back, but it would be 25 for me.
So my favorite players growing up were Tom Zibikowski and Brady Quinn. Those are my guys. So 10 or 9, I guess. Sure. Zibby was the man, dude. And I know I've talked to Brian about this. I understand that, I understand that he had some shortcomings in coverage at times, all that type of stuff, man. But Zimikowski was such a bad dude, man. I love that guy. I love that guy.
He's that type of dude that you want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his limitations, but he brings so many other things.
Yeah.
To your defense and your team.
Yep.
It's like, okay, we understand the limitations, but the dude always finds a way to make plays.
So maybe I would pick number 9 then, because then I could have Jalen Smith. I could have Thomas Zimikowski. I could have Kyle Rudolph.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's go with 9. 9's a good number. All right. So only a couple left here. So we talked a little bit about CJ reclassifying, not reclassifying earlier. Josh Buffo, the motivational business banker, said, Ryan, Shaun, is the main reason for wanting CJ Carr to reclassify is because we have another 2024 quarterback we love and loves us, or more of the 2023 class to stay highly ranked. This is from a staff perspective, right? Because we know the staff is exploring this option of reclassification. I think it's more, Josh, because they value CJ very highly, and they want to maybe start the process a little bit earlier, and they don't have a 2023 quarterback. So I think it's a mixture of things. I personally am not for the reclassification, but it's ultimately not my decision. But I think that it's a combination of you want him to get on campus to get acclimated, because, we'll see what happens with Tyler Buchner as far as how long he is on campus at Notre Dame, coupled with the fact that you do not have a 2023 quarterback. And I think that's basically the decision-making process for the staff right now for me.
It's interesting because you talk about the evaluation period, and they're looking at guys, and they're in on some guys that might be committed, or having conversations with some people that might be committed at other schools and other programs at this time. And now that I will say, if you're a quarterback from the 23 class and you look at that game on Saturday night and you compare that, let's say you're a commit to Pittsburgh and you watch Keaton Slovis play, and then you turn over and you watch Tyler Buchner play. It's like, okay. You might not be so quick to lean towards Notre Dame and, decommit. That's just an example without putting names out there, So, look, there is no better recruiting resource than your team, your current team. Like, your current team shows everything that recruits want to see.
Yeah. Shaun, we got 2 questions left. I'm going to bang out this next one, and it's going to end on a question on you, sir. So we should have fun with this one. So we got Adam, who had a couple questions earlier, said, how would you compare Mpemba as an end prospect comparative to Keon Keeley? So Keon Keeley is much more advanced than Samuel Mpemba right now. Samuel Mpemba has played a lot of different positions, so he is not as nuanced as a pass rusher as a Keon Keeley is right now. Keon is also longer. He's about 6'6". And Mpemba's about 6'4". So, it's not like Mpemba's short, has length for his size. But I think the biggest differences is that Keon's a little longer, a little more nuanced, a little more of bend right now for me as a pass rusher. And Mpemba's a freak athlete, though. Like, he is explosive. He can convert speed to power. And he has that profile where you could say, hey, you're going to get some spots at Rover, you're going to get some spots at Wicks and linebacker, you're going to get some spots at Viper. Like, you can play all over the place. So versatility goes in the favor of a Samuel Mpemba. Upside with Mpemba is also very good, but I think Keeley just has a crazy upside, man. Like, he's just a really, really talented player, great length. I think he's the best player in the nation in the 2023 class. So that's just kind of a quick comparison there. And our last question of the day, from Ladarius Martin, a resident Alabama fan. Shaun, who is your top 5 players in the Notre Dame? In the ND Freeman era. So now on the team, top 5 players on the team now. Is that what he's asking? Should we extend that here? Let's extend that, Shaun. Let's go back to top 5 favorite players since the year 2000. Can we do that? So we'll go back to, was it Bob Davie 2000? I guess, right? So it'd be Bob Davie to the Tyrone Willingham, Charlie Weiss, to Brian Kelly, to where we are now. Top 5 players for the last 22 years, we'll say.
Okay. I can do that, and then we can get to that conversation. Top 5 players
Yeah.
Freeman era just started. So the top 5 players right now, definitely Foskey, Joseph, Mayer. Yeah. Remember that. The correct pronunciation is Mayer. Like mayoral candidate, not mayor. It's Mayer.
Mayer.
I found that out last week. So Mayer, Foskey, Brandon Joseph, and then I would put the 2 tackles, in my opinion.
Love it.
Top 5 players currently.
Love it, man. Love it.
This is tough, man.
Here, let me do mine first, and then I'll let you finish up with it. All right. So let's do this. My top 5 players. This is basically growing up, right? For me.
Yeah.
So top 5 growing up was, I already mentioned Zibikowski.
Yeah.
Manti Te'o would be on there.
Yeah.
In the top 5. I mentioned Brady Quinn. He would 100% be in my top 5.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably go Quentin Nelson and Tyler Eifert's. That would probably be my top 5. That's yeah. I was a big Tyler Eifert fan, man. Big Tyler Eifert fan. So that would be my top 5, I think.
I'm going to go Q. Jalen, Manti, Ronnie Stanley.
Oh, Ronnie, nice. It's tough, man. I know. It's tough.
Yo. Because I really love Stephon Tuitt, man. I'll put Brady Quinn in there. Guys have to have a quarterback.
Yeah.
Have to have a quarterback. But it's so tough to leave Zach Martin out. Zach Martin is like the father of the rest of the great offensive line. Like he jumped it off. Like
you're not wrong.
Zach Martin jumped it off, and by the way, was like the best offensive lineman in the NFL for like 6 years. I mean, he jumped it off. So
keeping Jalen Smith off was really tough for me. Someone just said Everett Golson. Torian Folston was a guy that I liked a lot. But obviously his career did not end the way that we wanted it to with the injuries and whatnot. But yeah, Jalen Smith, I wanted to get on the list, man. But like I had to put Eifert on there as my last guy. I had to. Yeah. I mean, he was my guy. Love Tyler Eifert. But that is going to do it for this show. We appreciate everyone again for a little bit of recruiting talk, some college football roundtable, and a little bit of the mailbag for this Notre Dame recruiting hour. If you could please, before you head out of here, like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you're listening on a podcast, give us a 5-star review. Really appreciate it. Leave in the 5-star review that you think Ryan and Shaun are awesome, right? We really would appreciate that so much. I want to thank Shaun Davis, of course, for joining me today. This was a lot of fun. Over 3 hours, which is the longest that I've gone without Brian Driscoll on this show. So, Shaun, I think we had a new career high as far as us together here today. But we appreciate everyone for checking us out. Boards.irishbreakdown.com will be consistently giving you guys great content and intel on the board. So go sign up there today. From Shaun Davis, I am Ryan Roberts. Thank you all. And tomorrow I will be back with Brian Driscoll. Thank you all so much for joining the Irish Breakdown podcast.